Chapter 61:12. Looking at Di Baichen's display of light energy, Lu Hongwei stood there in a daze, as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. With his experience, how could he not understand that Di Baichen's talent in the light attribute was equally astonishing? With such talent, even if it couldn't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, it was definitely an extraordinary existence in the Radiant Sacred Assembly. If Di Baichen was in the Radiant Sacred Assembly, there was no doubt that he would be heavily nurtured. However, such astonishing talent actually appeared in the body of a dark attribute cultivator. He never knew that Di Baichen had such talent. The 7 presidents were silent. They found it hard to believe that such a thing could happen. Most importantly, in today's environment where young people were fighting for the limelight, ordinary people with such talent would have long been unable to restrain themselves from showing off. However, Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were actually able to endure and not say anything. This didn't conform to common sense at all. This kind of talent, coupled with Di Baichen's heavenly mandate constitution and Bailey Hongzhuang's multiple identities and means, even they had to admit that among the young cultivators in the entire upper realm, they were extremely powerful existences. Most importantly, this kind of mentality was even more terrifying. The 7 presidents didn't know what to say at this moment, because they were worried that if they said another point, they would be refuted. After all, the speed at which they were slapped in the face just now was too fast. Jun Hongqing couldn't help but look at Di Yujue with a trace of envy. Having such a son and daughter-in-law was indeed something to be proud of. Originally, he didn't understand why Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was extremely outstanding every time they went out for experience. Now he finally understood. With this kind of talent, coupled with their own abilities, ordinary people were indeed no match for them. He really didn't know where Di Yujue's good luck came from. He clearly didn't have any training, but he had already grown to be so outstanding. You also have dual attributes. Lei Ming frowned as he looked at Di Baichen, his voice full of uncertainty. If Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was special, and she might have some talents that others didn't have, then why was Di Baichen in the same situation? For so many years, there had never been a cultivator with dual attributes in the upper realm. Now, not only had they suddenly appeared, but there were also 2 of them. Most importantly, they were a couple. Could there really be such a coincidence in this world? That's right. Di Baichen nodded. When I first awakened, I had dual attributes. After saying so, Di Baichen turned to look at Lu Hongwei and the others. Guild leaders, under such circumstances, you should be able to believe that awakening the darkness attribute doesn't mean that one's heart is dark, right? Lu Hongwei and the others looked at each other, but no one answered. This was something they had always believed in. If they agreed, then they would have no reason to stop the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. No one was surprised by the silence of the 7 guild leaders. This news came too suddenly. If he didn't have some time to think about it, it would be impossible to give an answer. Most importantly, looking at Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang standing together, a thought involuntarily emerged in everyone's mind. Perhaps the appearance of the 2 of them was a turning point for the darkness attribute cultivators. Just as the time had not come yet, the darkness attribute had been suppressed in the past. However, when that opportunity appeared, all of this might change. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang might be that opportunity. Chapter 61:13. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen looked at the shocked 7 guild leaders, and no one urged them. In fact, everything was as they had expected. Once the dual attribute talent was displayed, it would inevitably cause an extremely sensational effect. Perhaps the reason why they awakened these 2 attributes was that their master wanted to help them, making their path smoother. Lu Hongwei was silent for a long time before he said, "Why don't we put this matter aside for the time being and discuss it first?" There were too many unforeseen events now. If they didn't take some time to carefully consider it, acting rashly might be even worse. I agree. Song Langtian nodded. Originally, because of his relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't want to intervene too much in the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Now that such a thing had happened, if they couldn't give everyone an explanation, it would only affect the image of the 7 major guilds. Listening to Lu Hongwei and Song Longtian's words, Luo Qinghao and the other 4's faces became more and more gloomy. If they stopped all this now, it would mean sending a message to everyone that they needed to discuss whether to let the Dark Sacred Assembly be established. However, their purpose here was to stop all this. No, this will affect the dignity of our 7 major guilds, Luo Qinghao said. Yang Yi agreed. Whether Di Beichen and Song Langtian have dual attributes or not, our decision won't change, so don't hesitate now. Just stop it. Although these 2 young people are young, their methods are not simple. We don't need to listen to what they say. With the power of our 7 major guilds, can't we stop them? Thunder's face was the most ugly. Di Beichen had previously contradicted them many times. If this matter was temporarily put aside today, how could he get out of the embarrassing situation? But this matter really needs to be discussed, Lu Hongwei said in a deep voice. No need. Thunder's voice turned cold. President Lu, because Bailey Hongzhuang is the Holy Maiden of Light, you have been shielding her in every possible way. Now you even have such thoughts. Isn't it too much? In his opinion, Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian seemed to have been bribed by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Since they came here, the 2 of them had not done anything, and even tried to speak up for Bailey Hongzhuang and Song Langtian. It was really hateful. I've never protected anyone, Lu Hongwei said with a straight face. President Lei, I hope that you won't mix your personal feelings into this matter. Everything I've done is for the sake of the Sacred Assembly. Now that so many changes have occurred, if I persist, the consequences may not be good. As the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, Lu Hongwei's prestige was undeniable. Originally, he did not say anything because he had not made up his mind. However, now that Lei Ming had been provoked and was acting more and more recklessly, he could not allow the latter to continue like this. Lei Ming's expression froze as his heart trembled. Facing Lu Hongwei's pair of fierce eyes, he finally regained his senses. Among the 7 presidents, his position was second only to Lu Hongwei, but once Lu Hongwei was angry, he still had to be cautious. Even though no one knew what the 7 presidents were talking about, they could roughly guess what was going on from their expressions. Obviously, there had been a disagreement among the 7 presidents on this matter. Chapter 61:14. Yujue, it seems that dual attributes really do have quite a bit of influence. A trace of a smile appeared on Di Linshuan's face. As the former head of the Di family, he was a shrewd person. Even before Di Beichen and Yu Yujue had displayed their talents, he had already noticed that President Lu and President Song seemed to have a lot of concerns about this matter. Otherwise, with President Lu's status, he would definitely be the one to represent this matter. Originally, because none of the 7 presidents had come forward, they had already subconsciously thought that none of them would be able to change their minds. Now that 2 of the presidents didn't show any signs of opposition, this was already a pleasant surprise to them. If they couldn't come to a conclusion for the time being, they would have a much higher chance of success. Di Yujue's lips curled into a faint smile. Beichen and Hongzhuang really are a match made in heaven. Apart from the 2 of them, I'm afraid that no one else can do this. Even if they were stronger than Beichen and Yu Yujue, he was certain that no one else would be able to do this better than the 2 of them. I feel that this seemingly impossible matter actually has a trace of hope. Lin Wenlan's voice relaxed a bit. Even she felt that this scene was inconceivable. This situation was as if everyone was certain that this was a dead end. Some people wouldn't turn back until they hit a wall, but it seemed like they were about to succeed. Lin Yunqing clenched her hands into fists as she constantly prayed in her heart, hoping that Beichen and Yu Yujue would succeed. As parents, their strength was simply too insignificant in front of the 7 presidents. At this moment, all they could do was pray. After a while, Lu Hongwei's voice rang out. Everyone, today's matter has happened too suddenly. I feel that we need some time to discuss this matter. Once these words were spoken, an uproar broke out. Shocked gazes fell on the 7 presidents, or on Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang's bodies. On one hand, everyone was shocked by the 7 presidents' decision. On the other hand, The young cultivators were shocked by Bailey Hongzhuang and Yu Yujua's success. This was simply too shocking. In their opinion, this was a simple and violent matter. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's glib tongue, they were actually able to persuade the 7 presidents? It can't be? Do we still need to discuss this matter? Nangong Yuqing was completely dumbfounded. He stretched out his hand and pinched his arm. When he felt the pain, he was sure that everything in front of him was real. What do you want to discuss? Xiao Sudong's lips twitched. Wasn't this too fucking fake? Didn't the upper realm forbid the establishment of the Dark Sanctum? But now, because Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Yiqian had dual attributes, this idea had changed? Tomorrow, we will give everyone a definite answer. Lu Hongwei didn't care about the discussion below the stage and made a decision that couldn't be refused. Although Lei Ming and the others were dissatisfied, they could only swallow their dissatisfaction in front of the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. At the same time, they also made up their minds to talk to President Tong Lu today. If the Dark Sanctum was really established, then the 7 major guilds would really become a joke. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both breathed a sigh of relief and revealed happy smiles on their faces. Chapter 61:15. At least, as far as the current situation was concerned, they had the upper hand. Huang Futing and the other dark attribute cultivators also showed comfortable smiles on their faces. Looking at the 2 young figures on the high platform, everyone admired them even more. Their president and his wife were really amazing people. They were almost ready to risk their lives today, but they didn't expect their president and his wife to turn the tide and forcibly stop such a scene. Huangfu, does this mean that the 7 presidents may allow the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly? Qin Wan'er couldn't hide her joy. Once the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, everyone would have no reason to reject the Dark Attribute cultivators. In this way, Huang Futing didn't need to bear such heavy shackles anymore. Huang Futing muttered, "Now things are indeed developing in a good direction, but before it's confirmed, no one can be sure of the result. In my opinion, among the 7 presidents, I'm afraid that only President Liu and President Song have changed their minds." Ah, Qin Wan'er's smile froze, and her brows furrowed. Then, is the possibility of success relatively small? That's not necessarily the case. Huang Futing smiled faintly. Among the 7 presidents, President Liu is the leader. As long as we can persuade President Liu, this matter will have a great turn for the better. I still believe in the young master and his wife's ability. Now he really had no choice but to accept the young master's ability. Today's scenes made people gasp in amazement. Lu Hongwei ignored the dissatisfaction of Lei Ming and the others, and turned to Di Beichen and said, "You two come here, I want to talk to you." Yes, even if they were not on the same side now, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Hongwei had always been very respectful to Lu Hongwei. What's more, they seemed to see hope in President Liu. As Lu Hongwei and the others left with Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Hongwei, the people around the square knew that there would be no good show to watch today, so they all dispersed. I wonder what the result will be tomorrow. Thinking about it, I'm really looking forward to it. If the upper realm really has another Dark Sacred Assembly, then it will be really interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen will also become famous. No matter what, today's events have opened our eyes. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Everyone discussed as they left. Just based on what they had seen today, this trip had not been in vain. As for tomorrow, it would probably be even more exciting than today. Damn it, how did the situation become like this? Xiao Yanlong frowned. At the beginning, the situation was extremely advantageous to them. But for some reason, the situation had changed. Now he felt a strong sense of crisis. If things continued to develop like this, the situation might become more and more unfavorable for them. This Bailey Hongzhuang really has some tricks up her sleeve. Even President Liu was bribed by her. Jun Hongcheng gritted his teeth. He knew that there was something strange about these 2 little guys. So, he had already prepared a trump card. What should we do now? Even someone as calm as Xiao Yanlong couldn't help but panic at this moment. Once the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, the D family would have a transcendent status. At that time, they wouldn't even have the right to negotiate. Chapter 61:16. The headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly. After Lu Hongwei said that he had something to discuss, Bailey Hongzhuang brought President Lu and other presidents to the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly. President Lu, you can rest here tonight, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a light smile. Before Lu Hongwei spoke, Lei Ming said, "It's not appropriate for us to live here. Let's find a place to stay in the Emperor Cloud City." Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer said anything. This Lei Ming was obviously not on the same side as them. No matter what they do, the other party will not appreciate it. So there was no need to please him. "President Lu, since you have something to talk about, you can stay here. I have nothing to ask, so I'll take my leave first." Lei Ming's face was livid. Since Lu Hongwei made the plan to suspend, his face has not looked good. As soon as his voice fell, Lei Ming turned and left directly. Lu Hongwei glanced at his back faintly, and then retracted his gaze. Lei Ming had always been like this, so it was not surprising that he would do such a thing. He just had some things to ask Bailey Hongzhuang. If Lei Ming stayed here, it would be more troublesome. Instead of that, it was better to let him leave and avoid trouble. As Lei Ming left, Luo Qinghao and others looked at each other and followed him. In addition to Lu Hongwei, the only one left was Song Langtian. "Hongzhuang, when did you awaken the dual attributes?" "When we first awakened our talents, we awakened the dual attributes. But at first the two of us didn't know what was going on. At that time, the person in charge of the awakening said that there were certain impurities in our talents. Later, after our research, we understood that it was not an impurity, but another attribute." Facing Lu Hongwei, Bailey Hongzhuang also told the truth. Now that they recalled the situation at that time, they also felt it was very interesting. "So that's how it is." Lu Hongwei understood and said, "Can you show it to me again?" "No problem." When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen once again displayed the two attributes, Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian couldn't help but marvel. At this moment, when they calmed down and looked carefully, they increasingly felt the power of the dual attributes. "You might have opened up a whole new world." A smile appeared on Lu Hongwei's face. From now on, there would be another possibility in the entire upper realm, and that was that the awakening of a cultivator's innate talent would not be limited to just one type of innate talent. It was possible that two or even more attributes would be awakened. "President Lu, regarding the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly, we've already discussed many things before." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were serious. "Darkness is just an attribute. It has nothing to do with the cultivator's personality. It would be too presumptuous of you to reject all dark attribute cultivators just because of this conjecture. Over the past few days, as more and more darkness-type cultivators have come here, our understanding has also increased. It had not been easy for them all these years. President, although not allowing the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly is a rule passed down for so many years, I don't think the rule can't be broken, just like the dual attributes. This has never happened before, but it still happened now, didn't it?" Chapter 61:17. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's anxious and nervous look, President Lu couldn't help but chuckle. "It's rare to see you so nervous." "Sure enough, only Di Beichen's affairs can make you so concerned." Hearing this, Di Beichen turned his eyes full of affection. Bailey Hongzhuang blushed slightly and stubbornly said, "I'm fighting for a future for countless dark attribute cultivators." Lu Hongwei put away his joking expression and looked at Song Langtian. "President Song, what do you think about this matter?" "In fact, I have never been too insistent on this point. Over the years, dark attribute cultivators have indeed had a hard time. Attribute issues and character cannot be linked. What happened hundreds of years ago does not mean that it will happen hundreds of years later. In fact, if there is really a genius who wants to rule the entire upper realm, it is possible no matter what attribute." Song Langtian slowly expressed his thoughts. He could only say this in front of President Lu. If he said it in front of Lei Ming and the others, it would inevitably cause a dispute. This matter has been going on for so many years. It is indeed time to seek a change. Lu Hongwei nodded. On the other side, Lei Ming and the others found a place to stay in the Emperor Cloud City. Although the inns in the Emperor Cloud City were already full, it was still easy for the 5 of them to find a place to stay. As soon as they entered the room, Lei Ming couldn't help but say angrily, "I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't expect President Lu to have changed so much." Indeed, President Lu's performance today really disappointed us. Yan Yi nodded, his face full of disappointment. Luo Qinghao sighed. I don't know what kind of magic potion this Bailey Hongzhuang gave President Lu to make him so protective of her. If this kind of thing was in the past, there would be no discussion at all. In my opinion, President Lu and President Song will most likely agree with their approach after talking with them today. I don't understand if President Lu is getting old or something. He is getting more and more confused when doing things. If President Lu is allowed to make the decision, then it's really over. Lei Ming slammed the table. The anger on his face was obvious. Di Baichen was already so arrogant today. If the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, he wouldn't care about anyone in the future. Most importantly, how was he supposed to face others in this way? Just based on this point alone, he could not let Di Baichen succeed. I can understand why Guild Leader Song is doing this. Feng Yuxian slowly said. I heard that Bailey Hongzhuang cured Song Longtian's hidden disease a while ago. Just because of this kindness, he can't do anything to Bailey Hongzhuang. There's actually such a thing. Yan Yi was astonished and immediately understood. This is indeed understandable. What do you all think? Thunder looked at the 4 guild leaders. I think we must persevere. I agree. Luo Qinghao said without hesitation. Darkness attribute cultivators are so dangerous. We can't let them develop. Today he really felt that the momentum of those guys was simply terrifying. With Di Baichen and Feng Yuxian leading them, those guys would probably become stronger soon. Chapter 61:18. It seems that all of us have the same idea. Lei Ming looked at everyone's reaction with a satisfied look on his face. Fortunately, not everyone was as muddle-headed as President Lu. At least they were still clear-headed. The upper realm had been like this for so many years, living very peacefully. They didn't need to take risks to accept other things at all. Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongcheng had also been thinking of a way. Based on today's situation, if they didn't quickly find a way to stabilize the situation, then Di Baichen might really succeed. After knowing that only Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian were in the Dark Sacred Assembly, Lei Ming and the other presidents had left. They had a better understanding of the situation. President Lu and President Song must support Di Baichen, so we must let the other 5 presidents make up their minds. Jun Hongcheng said in a deep voice. Xiao Yanlong frowned slightly, his face full of worry. Even if these 5 presidents are firm, President Lu has always been the leader of the 7 presidents. As long as he agrees to this, it will be very difficult for the others to stop it. Not to mention anything else, it could be seen from President Lu's performance on the stage today. What was the use of President Lei and the others objecting? President Lu had stabilized the whole situation with just one sentence, and there was no room for argument at all. Don't be so pessimistic, there will always be a way. Jun Hongqing looked certain. Think about it carefully. President Lu helping Bailey Hongzhuang. Many people will think that he is biased. No matter how high President Lu's status is, he can't withstand everyone's opposition. As long as we can incite everyone's opposition at the right time, then there is still room for negotiation. Isn't the reason why today's situation has become like this, because Di Baichen and the others have grasped everyone's emotions? Xiao Yanlong nodded. What you said makes sense. Di Baichen and the others' words today are indeed preconceived, causing everyone's thoughts to change. Moreover, such a pitiful act makes it impossible for people to refute. Just like today, President Lei only said a cruel fact. It was not so difficult to understand in normal times. But in today's environment, everyone inevitably felt that he was cold and cruel. I have some friendship with President Lei. No matter what, let's give it a try first. Jun Hongcheng's solemn face brightened up a little. He knew Lei Ming's character. Di Baichen had offended him so much today. No matter what, Lei Ming would never forgive him. All right. After convincing Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both breathed a sigh of relief and smiled happily. Since you've understood, I'll go back first. Lu Hongwei stood up. I need to go back and tell them about this. I'll announce it to everyone tomorrow. Thank you, President. Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. With President Lu's reputation, as long as he agreed, there wouldn't be any problems. Even if the other 5 presidents still objected, as long as President Lu agreed tomorrow, things would still be much easier to solve. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and Song Langtian's happy appearance, Lu Hongwei also smiled faintly. You two young people are really not ordinary people. You even dare to do such a thing. You are destined to succeed. Chapter 61:19. When she had first mentioned this to the president, she had felt that the president's heart had wavered. However, she had also understood that it would not be easy to make such a decision. However, she had never thought that the president would actually agree with their approach. This kind of support was simply too important to them. As the 2 presidents left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen finally let out a sigh of relief. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. The corners of their lips could not help but curl upwards. It seems that this matter has progressed more smoothly than we had imagined. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Today first, Ouyang Jifeng had expressed his support. Now even the 2 presidents had agreed with their approach. Even if the matter had not been declared a success, it was already halfway to success. This is all thanks to my wife. Di Beichen chuckled. If my wife had not convinced the 2 presidents, this matter would not have progressed so smoothly. No, it's because of you. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes grew brighter. Many things seemed to be very difficult, but when one really tried to do it, the sense of accomplishment was incomparable to anything else. They had done such a crazy thing. Even in the face of such great pressure, their original intentions had not changed. Now that they were about to succeed, this kind of joy could not be expressed in words. I think I should make a trip back to the family, so that my father and the others don't have to worry so much. Di Beichen smiled as he looked outside the room. He knew that his family had always supported his every decision, but he also wanted to protect his family. These days, he had clearly sensed the pressure that the Lin and Di family were shouldering. This made his heart very heavy. He thought that if he brought this good news back today, everyone would be able to feel more at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Then you should make a trip back so that everyone can feel more at ease. However, before the dust has settled, we cannot let down our guard. That President Luo and President Lei have been targeting us. They must not be easy to deal with. Hearing this, Di Beichen narrowed his long and beautiful eyes. A faint light flashed across them. He also had a deep impression of these 2 presidents. Indeed, although President Lu had already agreed with their approach, it wasn't easy to convince Lei Ming and the others. This matter was troublesome to deal with after all. At the same time, the entire Emperor Cloud City was discussing this matter. Everyone was curious about the results that would be announced tomorrow. Various guesses kept spreading, but most people still believed that it was impossible for the Dark Sacred Assembly to be established, because that was something that they had always resisted. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both have the darkness attribute, I feel that this is because they are an exception. After being bullied for so many years, the darkness attribute cultivators must hate us to the core. If we let them rise again now, their hatred for us will completely erupt. Wouldn't that be troublesome? You're right. That's the most dangerous part. Xiao Sudong and Nangong Yuqing listened to everyone's discussion, and finally felt relieved. I told you that no one would support it. It's just that today's situation was too sudden, and everyone couldn't react in time. It won't be like this tomorrow. Xiao Sudong heaved a sigh of relief and said. Chapter 61:20. Early the next morning, the cultivators of Emperor Cloud City once again gathered in the square of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Many people had stayed up all night and were curious about today's results, so they had already rushed over early in the morning. Di Yujue and the others also arrived very early. Even though Di Beichen had already told them that President Lu had agreed, they still hadn't rested that night. This was because they were looking forward to it even more. Once the Dark Sacred Assembly was successfully established, how exciting would that be? After today, everyone will be able to live peacefully. Lin Wenlan smiled faintly. For a while, everyone had been worried about this matter, and the stone in their hearts had never been lifted. Fortunately, the situation was much better than they had imagined. President Liu and President Song were directly convinced. When he heard it last night, he even wondered if he had misheard. It was really too unbelievable. Hearing Lin Wenlan's words, Di Linxian and the others smiled. I'm afraid only Beichen and Hong Zhuang can do this. While Di Yujue was looking around the square, his gaze quietly fell on Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongcheng. However, when he noticed the smiles on their faces, his heart suddenly sank. Logically speaking, once the Dark Sacred Assembly was successfully established, the most worried people would be Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongcheng. After yesterday's event, he noticed that the two of them had extremely ugly expressions. Obviously, they were worried about this matter. However, after a night, the two of them were still so calm and composed. This didn't make sense. Could it be that there were some unforeseen circumstances? Just as Di Yujue was thinking, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang appeared on the high platform together. They were also wearing the exclusive clothes of the Dark Sacred Assembly, black and red, revealing a trace of fierceness and domineering. President Liu hasn't arrived yet. Let's wait patiently for the time being. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, and her voice was sweet and calm. Even if the President Liu hadn't made a decision yet, after noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's relaxed expression, everyone understood the general idea in their hearts. It can't be. Are the President Liu really going to approve the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly? If that's the case, then what's the point of everything I've persevered for? Who knows? Aren't these decisions made by the 7 guilds? Just based on yesterday's performance, I already feel that something is wrong. If the establishment is successful, who among the younger generation will be able to compete with the two of them? Whispers rang out one after another. Everyone was whispering to each other. Everyone had hated and despised dark attribute cultivators for many years. In their eyes, dark attribute cultivators were destined to be despised. When they thought about how dark attribute cultivators would be on equal footing with them in the future, everyone felt uncomfortable. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from the right. Hearing the sound of footsteps, everyone turned their gazes towards it. At this moment, only the guild leaders of the 7 large guilds had arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang also turned her head and looked expectantly at the appearance of the 7 guild leaders. But with one look, her brows furrowed, because the person in the lead wasn't President Liu, but Lei Ming. As the few guild leaders gradually approached, Bailey Hongzhuang also saw the situation clearly, and her heart sank. Chapter 61-21. Di Beichen's eyes instantly turned gloomy. Even if he didn't know what had happened, he was sure that the situation in front of him was absolutely abnormal. President Liu and President Song had made up their minds yesterday to go back and persuade the other presidents. However, now that all the other presidents had appeared except for these two, there must be something fishy going on. Even if the 2 presidents were not convinced, or were convinced, they could still come together today. Given the current situation, there was only one possibility. Something had happened to the 2 presidents. Damn it! Below the high platform, Xiren couldn't help but curse, his eyes full of anger. These guys are really bold. They actually dared to attack President Liu. What should we do now? Shengguan Yingying also panicked. They had the advantage, but President Liu and the others didn't come. Needless to say, President Lei and the others were definitely up to no good. The expressions of Di Yujue and the others suddenly changed. They already knew the outcome of today's event. No wonder Xiao Yanlong and the others were so calm. It turns out that they already knew all of this. Di Yujue's voice was ice cold, without the slightest bit of warmth. A vicious light flashed in his eyes. He had really underestimated these 2 fellows. They actually dared to use such methods in the Imperial Cloud City. I didn't expect Lei Ming and the others to be so bold. They even dared to do such a thing on such an occasion. Lin Wenlon gradually folded her hands, her face full of anger. President Lei and the others definitely won't support the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Isn't the situation now terrible? Lin Yunqing looked nervous. Victory was already in sight, but she didn't expect such a thing to happen. The most important thing was that this scene happened so suddenly that they didn't have time to find the two presidents. Di Yujue turned sideways and immediately ordered the elders to take people to the Emperor Cloud City to find the two presidents. According to his judgment, Lei Ming and the others didn't have the guts to kill President Lu and the others. The reason for the current situation was that the two presidents had been drugged or locked somewhere. As long as they could find the two presidents quickly, there might be a chance for them to turn things around. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and saw the heaviness in each other's eyes. It seems that President Lu and President Song were ambushed after they returned last night. Bailey Hongzhuang said in a deep voice. I've overlooked this point. Di Beichen clenched his fists under his sleeves, his eyes filled with anger and guilt. This matter was so important to the entire Dark Sacred Assembly. He should have been more careful last night. Initially, he thought that with President Lu's status, no one would dare to make a move against him. But now, it seemed that he had been too naive. The so-called President Lei actually used such underhanded methods so casually. Bailey Hongzhuang held Di Beichen's hand and shook her head. It's not your fault. She understood Di Beichen's annoyance and self-blame. Because once they failed, it meant that so many dark attribute cultivators would lose their homes and hope. However, this wasn't Di Beichen's responsibility alone. She couldn't bear to see him shoulder all the responsibility. At the same time, Ouyang Jifeng's voice rang in their ears. I'll immediately send people to find them. You two try to stall for time. Chapter 61-22. Very quickly, Lei Ming and the rest appeared on the high platform. All five of them had faint smiles on their faces. When they brushed past Di Beichen, Lei Ming's voice quietly rang out. You're destined to be disappointed today. Di Beichen narrowed his eyes, and a fierce look flashed across his eyes. This despicable and shameless fellow. No matter what the result was, Lei Ming was an enemy that he had to kill with his own hands. President Lei, may I know where President Lu and President Song went? Di Beichen adjusted his expression and pretended to be puzzled as he asked. Lei Ming's face was apologetic. I'm really sorry about this. President Lu and President Song probably ate something dirty last night and are not feeling well. They won't be able to come today. Since that's the case, why don't you let me meet the two presidents? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, her eyes filled with ridicule. As expected of the president of the Thunder Attribute Guild, he could lie without blushing. Most importantly, almost everyone present knew that Lei Ming was lying, but he could still say it with a straight face. It was as if he himself believed that the lie was the truth. There's no need. Lei Ming waved his hand. I know that Miss Bailey is a doctor, but we've already asked a doctor to treat the two presidents last night. They only need to rest for a day, and they'll recover tomorrow. Below the stage, looking at the drama unfolding on the stage, with everyone's intelligence, how could they not understand the situation? It seems that President Lu and President Song chose to support the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly, so President Lei and the others thought of a way to prevent them from coming. You can tell just by looking at the changes in the Di family's expressions. Then President Lei and the others really have guts. They actually dared to do this. Won't President Lu and the others be angered to death when they wake up? So what if President Lu and the others are angry? Since they can't come today, the dust has already settled. No matter how dissatisfied they are, they can't change the situation. Everyone sighed and felt that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were really unlucky. They were originally just one step away from success, but such an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. This ending was destined to be unchangeable. However, no one had any objections to this outcome. This was how the upper realm had lived for so many years. Everyone's view of darkness attribute cultivators was deeply ingrained. They were unwilling to change anything. Although President Lei and the others' actions were indeed a little extreme, they didn't think it was a bad thing. In any case, this result was enough for them. Now, let me announce the final result of our discussion. A confident and complacent smile appeared on Lei Ming's face. When his gaze landed on Xiao Yanlong and Xiao Yan, there was an additional trace of tacit understanding. In his opinion, today's plan couldn't be more perfect. Wait. Di Beichen suddenly spoke, interrupting Lei Ming's words. Lei Ming frowned and coldly stared at Di Beichen. His eyes were filled with endless majesty and intimidation. Di Beichen, how dare you interrupt my announcement? For such an important matter, I think it's more appropriate for all the guild leaders to be present. Since the two guild leaders aren't here, why don't we postpone this matter for another day? It won't be too late to announce it, after the two guild leaders have recovered. Chapter 61-23. This matter was related to the future of all dark attribute cultivators. He would never allow such a thing to happen. It would be fine if the 7 presidents didn't agree. But the situation had clearly taken a turn for the better. How could he allow others to use tricks to deceive them? Absolutely not. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Luo Qinghao reprimanded him with an ashen face. Di Beichen, you are too disrespectful. Everyone present was a busy person. Because of this matter, they had already been delayed for 2 days. You have time to wait. But do you think everyone here has time to wait with you? It's such an important matter. What's the harm in delaying some time? Di Beichen wouldn't be scared out of his wits by Luo Qinghao's reprimand. This kind of reprimanding was simply a manifestation of a guilty conscience. He didn't care what the presidents in front of him thought of him. Anyway, the enmity between the two sides had long been formed. All he cared about was his family and the dark sacred assembly. Di Beichen, you are really bold. Are you doubting us by saying such words? Lei Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. Since yesterday, you have been impolite, self-righteous and lawless. Is this the temperament of the young master of the Di family? That's right. I've always heard that the young master of the Di family is a genius. Now it seems that he is just arrogant and willful. Feng Yuxian also spoke. She didn't deny Di Beichen's talent in cultivation, but judging from his performance in the past 2 days, she really didn't have a good impression of him. In fact, it was already disgraceful to be able to do such a thing that was universally condemned. Di Beichen sneered. His unparalleled face curved into an evil and playful smile. His eyes, which were as bright as stars, were covered with a layer of dark clouds, inexplicably adding a trace of charming evil aura. Arrogant and willful, Di Beichen's eyes gradually turned cold. This attitude towards people like you is already not bad. You, Feng Yuxian's face flushed red. Di Beichen was clearly mocking them. What did you do to the 2 guild leaders? Di Beichen's voice was as hard and powerful as steel. He threw away his previous pretense and didn't try to hide anything anymore. What can we do? Lei Ming didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. Young people were young people. They couldn't solve this kind of problem, so they could only use this kind of method. However, no matter how angry Di Beichen was, it was useless, because he was destined to fail. As everyone knows, the relationship between us presidents is extremely good. How could there be a conflict, because of something that has already been decided? Lei Ming raised his hand. Ask everyone below the stage. Do you think they would believe such a thing? Bailey Hongzhuang's anger continued to rise as she looked at the contorted face. Sure enough, there were many people in high positions who pretended to be sanctimonious. This kind of guy really made people want to punch him. No one below the stage said anything. They only needed to watch the show. In fact, everyone's heart was as clear as a mirror. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. When it came to trickery, Di Beichen and Feng Yuxian were no match for Lei Ming and the others. Huang Futing and the others looked at the despicable Lei Ming and the others, and anger continued to rise in their hearts. Chapter 61-24. Now I declare. Lei Ming raised his voice and his loud voice reverberated from the center of the plaza. The dark sacred assembly cannot be established. As soon as these words were spoken, cheers rang out. Xiao Sudong and the others all had excited expressions on their faces. They had been worried for an entire night. Although there were many twists and turns in the process, the result was exactly what they had expected. Di Beichen and the others had failed. This allowed them to regain a trace of confidence. The confidence that had been crushed by Di Baichen and the others over the past few days was slowly recovering. This was because Di Baichen and the others would also fail. And they were not the only ones. And now, Di Baichen would definitely pay the price for everything that he had done. Hundreds of years ago, the 7 major guilds had always agreed to resist the dark attribute. Even after so many years, this point will not change. Even after hundreds of years, this situation will still not change. Therefore, I hope that no one will mention this topic in the future. That will definitely be rejected. Under the cheers of the crowd, Lei Ming solemnly and seriously said these words. However, his gaze quietly fell on Di Baichen. Obviously, his words were more directed at Di Baichen. Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's expressions became extremely ugly. President Lu was not present, and with their influence as juniors, they were indeed not a match for Lei Ming and the others. However, they were unwilling to accept this result. Below the high platform, Di Yujue and the others were also ashen. However, facing this result, they felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Lei Ming had already announced this result. Unless President Lu immediately appeared to refute all of this, it would be too difficult for them to change everything. Still haven't found President Lu and the others' whereabouts? Di Linxuan's expression was gloomy. From his tightly knitted brows, one could see his anxiety. Di Baichen had prepared for so long. It was really a pity that all of his efforts had gone to waste like this. Most importantly, this was Baichen's master's last wish. With Baichen's character, he would definitely not give up so easily. If he failed this time, it would be even more difficult for him to make a comeback in the future. Di Yujue shook his head slightly. Xiao Yanlong and Junhong Cheng must be involved in this matter. These 2 old foxes have many tricks up their sleeves. It's really difficult to find President Lu and President Song's whereabouts in a short period of time. Di Linxian sighed. In the end, we were still one step short. Huang Futing and the other dark attribute cultivators were extremely upset. After so many years, they had finally seen a glimmer of hope. They had clearly been very close to success, but the other party's despicable method. Ever since they had awakened the darkness attribute, they had been living in such an environment. No matter how despicable and dirty the other party's methods were, it seemed that when they were targeted, everything became natural. Why did? Damn it! President Lei is really too shameless. Even someone as mature and steady as Huang Futing could not help but curse at this moment. Qin Wanner's face was filled with anxiety. We've already sent our men out. However, it's impossible to find them in a short period of time. Chapter 6125. After the results were announced, Lei Ming and the others revealed a satisfied expression. Everything had been settled. Even if President Lu and the others woke up tomorrow and were furious, everything would be meaningless. Compared to the stability of the entire upper realm, they felt that everything was worth it. The dark sacred assembly must be destroyed, Luo Qinghao said solemnly. His voice was sonorous and powerful, carrying with it an absolute majesty. That's right, it must be destroyed. Xiao Yanlong stood up and immediately agreed. I support it too. Jun Hongqing also stood up and quietly turned his gaze to Di Yujue and the others. In his opinion, things had not developed to this point yet. If they were only stopped, the Di family's reputation would only suffer a blow. Their strength would not be damaged, and it would not be beneficial to them. Therefore, what they needed to do was to enrage the Di family. As long as the Di family and the guild had a conflict, the Di family's strength would definitely be affected. When that time came, their crisis would be easily resolved. After Xiao Yanlong and the others stood up, the cultivators from the Xiao family and the Jun family also shouted one after another, raising the atmosphere to the extreme. The influence of the atmosphere was great, especially when everyone was in high spirits. Everyone's emotions could not help but be driven. Everyone shouted and agreed with this decision. No, Di Baichen's face was ashen. He could not accept this result at all. They had spent so much time and effort to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. Not only did they spend a lot of money and effort to establish it, but it also represented the hope of the Dark Attribute cultivators. He absolutely could not accept this. His voice was loud and pleasant. At this moment, it was mixed with anger and roaring, revealing a kind of extreme oppression, like the ocean before a storm. It was frighteningly oppressive. Debachin rarely made such a sound. His voice had always been light and gentle, with a touch of magnetism, without any ripples. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were familiar with him heard this, their hearts trembled. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed their hearts, making them unable to breathe. When Lei Ming saw Debachin's hysterical look, the corners of his lips curled up. He wanted to let this kid know that the world was not as simple as he thought. Those forces that he thought were already pretty good couldn't even withstand a single blow from them. Young people at this age would eventually suffer setbacks. Only then would they understand that they were just a drop in the ocean. Debachin, I'll give you a choice. Lei Ming's eyes were indifferent. He raised his chin slightly and looked down at Debachin. Whether it was his demeanor or his expression, it was full of contempt and pride. Give up on establishing the dark sacred assembly forever, and swear on your family. As long as you swear, we can let bygones be bygones. The D family was now at the peak of its power. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had resigned from her position as the Saint of Light, her medical skills would still make her a great influence. If possible, they didn't want to face the D family and the Lin family head-on. This was because once they fought, they would inevitably suffer great losses. Impossible. Almost as soon as Lei Ming finished speaking, Debachin's voice rang out. He spoke very slowly, but it was filled with extreme determination. He would never give up on all of this. Chapter 61-26. It's best to end this wrong decision as soon as possible, so that the entire family won't be implicated. Lei Ming and the others had a cold expression on their faces. Debachin was completely blinded by his sense of loyalty, or perhaps he couldn't bear the blow of failure. However, as long as one was smart, they would know that a wise man submits to circumstances. Since the outcome was already decided, there was no point in struggling. Stopping the loss in time was the wisest move. Facing those arrogant and disgusting faces, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a trace of disdain. Her voice was terrifyingly low. I also refuse. When these words came out, the 5 guild leaders were all stunned. They didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually go crazy with Debachin at this time. This was simply digging her own grave. They really refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Luo Qinghao was also angry. Why bother talking to them? Let's just do it directly. Lei Ming's expression was also gloomy. Debachin was completely shameless. If it wasn't for the D family and Lin family's face, he wouldn't have wasted his breath at all. Do it! Under Lei Ming's command, the practitioners of the 5 major guilds directly rushed towards the Dark Sacred Assembly's headquarters not far away. As the vigorous energy circulated, it was obvious that they wanted to directly destroy it. Stop! Debachin roared and his figure flew over. He would never allow everyone's hard work to go down the drain like this. After seeing this situation, Di Yujue and the others couldn't continue to sit below the stage. Even if Debachin had already told them a piece of good news last night, they still didn't relax in their preparations. The practitioners of the D family and Lin family came out in full force and blocked the practitioners who were rushing towards the Dark Sacred Assembly. It wasn't just the painstaking efforts of the Dark Attribute practitioners, it was also the painstaking efforts of their young masters. At the same time, the Dark Attribute practitioners had long been unable to hold back the anger in their hearts and rushed forward. It was like a black flood mixed with bright red flames. Everyone's eyes were burning with the flames of anger, burning fiercely, passionately, and crazily. They were already prepared to give up their lives. Rather than dragging out a meager existence, it was better to go all out and fight with everything they had. For so many years, they had never had the courage to resist. They felt inferior, defeated, and had never really straightened their backs. But now, someone was bearing the greatest pressure for them. If they didn't even have the courage to fight for that person, then they were real cowards. An earth-shattering roar rang out as a terrifying murderous aura spread out. Even though everyone knew that these dark attribute cultivators weren't very strong, their ferocious and bloodthirsty eyes made everyone's heart tremble. This gaze was like the eyes of a devil, filled with the aura of death. Whether it was their fanatical worship of Bachan or their murderous intent, it was a scene that no one had ever seen before. At that moment, everyone present couldn't help but feel their hearts tremble. It was as if they had lost control of their bodies for a moment, becoming stiff and cold. Lei Ming and the others couldn't help but be affected as well. Such a scene was equally shocking to them. However, this only strengthened their resolve. These guys were the unstable factors in the upper realm. If they continued to exist, they would only threaten the entire upper realm. Instead of that, they might as well catch them all in one fell swoop. A cruel light appeared in Lei Ming's eyes. He raised his right hand high and his cold voice was clearly heard. Chapter 61-27. As soon as these words came out, Bachan's line of sight shifted. Those deep eyes quietly filled with a trace of blood, with extreme hatred. All this while, he had been doing his best to facilitate this, so that the despised dark attribute cultivators could have a place to live in peace. This was something that normal people did not need to fight for. But to them, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even though he despised Lei Ming's cruelty, he never thought that he could be despicable to this extent. He actually planned to wipe out all the darkness attribute cultivators in one fell swoop. This was not giving them any chance to live at all. Bailey Hongzhuang also looked at Lei Ming in disbelief. This man was actually so cold-blooded? How could something so cruel and heinous in the eyes of others be so simple when it came out of his mouth? Diyujue and the others' expressions froze for a moment. When they came back to their senses, they could not help but feel annoyed. This guy is really shameless, Diyujue secretly spat. If it was said that he had some misgivings before, now that he was faced with this extremely cruel guy, he felt that he did not need to worry at all. This kind of person actually became the leader of a lightning-type guild? Are those people blind? Lin Wenlan's face was ashen. The veins on his temples bulged, revealing the anger in his heart. Do it! I'm going all out today. Ouyang Jifeng's eyes flashed with a trace of bloodlust. All these years, his elder brother had been unable to recover from the setback caused by the guild. No matter how much he comforted or advised him, it was useless. The inferiority that spread from the bottom of his heart made his heart ache. All these years, he had been working hard, so that he could become the family's young master. He hoped that one day, he would be able to do his best to change everything. However, now, this guy actually wanted to wipe out all the dark attribute cultivators. So once they succeeded, would his elder brother really not be able to see the light of day in the future? These cruel bastards. He would never allow it. Do it! Ouyang Jifeng suddenly spoke. His calm voice was as terrifying as death. Similarly, there was no emotion in it at all, only cruelty. The sudden voice attracted everyone's attention. When they saw Ouyang Jifeng suddenly speak, everyone felt that it was a little strange. They never thought that Ouyang Jifeng would be so hostile towards the dark attribute cultivators. This was not in line with his usual personality. Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongcheng looked at each other and smiled, then stood up at the same time. Initially, they had been worried that they would appear cruel if they stood up immediately. Now that Ouyang Jifeng had taken the lead, they no longer had to worry. Kill all the dark attribute cultivators. The cultivators from the Xiao and Jun had been waiting. Once they heard the master's command, they all immediately rushed to attack. Bachan heard the voice and looked at Xiao Yanlong. His bloodthirsty eyes were filled with extreme coldness, and his voice suppressed an extreme storm. Xiao family, Jun family, as long as I don't die today, I will slaughter your entire families and leave no one alive. Every word was dripping with blood, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. Xiao Yanlong turned his head and met a pair of bottomless eyes. The murderous intent that seeped out from those eyes sent chills down one's spine. It was as if they were being stared at by a demon, making it difficult for them to breathe. Ouyang Jifeng's gaze turned slightly. The hatred in his eyes was just as strong. Kill all those who attack the dark attribute cultivators. Chapter 61-28. So he wasn't targeting darkness-type cultivators. His target was actually the members of the association. Was he crazy? Everyone present was stupefied. Normally, They did not know that Ouyang Jifeng and Di Beichen had such a good personal relationship. They were actually supporting Di Beichen at a time like this. This was equivalent to throwing their entire family into this. Jiang Wenyan, Morong Jing, and Chen Feng exchanged glances. This scene was also outside of their expectations. Fight! What are you still hesitating for? Morong Jing shouted, his face filled with determination as he pressed forward courageously. If I don't attack at a time like this, how can I still be brothers? Jiang Wenyan's eyes were bloodshot as his gaze became exceptionally deep. The next second, a bright and dazzling smile bloomed on his lips. He suddenly stood up and said, "Members of the Jiang family, listen up. From now on, I am no longer the young master of the Jiang family. I am only me. Everything I do represents my own will. It has nothing to do with the Jiang family." As he finished speaking, he charged toward the group of dark attribute cultivators without hesitation. "I'm sorry. I am the young master of the Jiang family. I cannot implicate the entire family because of my own actions. Because the family is equally important in my heart. The only thing I can do is to fight with you until the end, brother." All the cultivators of the Jiang family were dumbstruck as they saw the young master's action. Normally, their young master was always calm and wise in their eyes. However, ever since they got to know Di Beichen, they found that their young master had changed a lot. In the face of such a young master, they could not say anything to criticize him. "Brother, from now on, I am no longer a member of the Jiang family. I only wish to fight with the young master." Suddenly, a cultivator of the Jiang family left behind this sentence and similarly charged into the crowd. They were clear that with their strength alone, it was impossible to stop the 5 great guilds. That was because the strength of the 5 great guilds was incomparably terrifying. However, there were certain things that a gentleman should and should not do. Some things were more important than one's life. "I am also not a member of the Jiang family." After the first person said this, the others followed suit. They were unwilling to implicate the entire family because of their own actions. However, when faced with something like this, they had no choice but to do it. As Chen Feng looked at Jiang Wenyan and Murong Jing, who had already rushed in, a rare smile appeared on his face. This bunch of idiots. He was obviously going to die, but he still put on such a righteous appearance. However, he actually felt very happy. At the very least, compared to the indifference, selfishness, and exploitation of others, this kind of passion was what he yearned for. Di Beichen was his first true friend. Because of Di Beichen, he got to know Jiang Wenyan and Morong Jing. These people had clearly not known each other for long, but there was a mysterious power that made them willing to risk their lives for each other. In the next instant he shouted, "Now I am no longer the great devil sect's eldest senior brother. I am Chen Feng." It was Di Beichen's brother. "Whoever goes against him is my enemy." As his voice faded, Chen Feng's body leaped as the origin energy within his body gushed out and attacked his opponent with surging killing intent. This sudden scene caused the 5 presidents on the high platform to be completely dumbfounded. Were these guys crazy? The Di family's defeat was already set, yet these guys still wanted to accompany Di Beichen to die. Chapter 61-29. What a joke. Lei Ming and the others felt that this was simply a joke. A scene that was normally impossible to happen was actually happening in front of them. Were these young people crazy? Xiao Sudong and Nangong Yuqing stared blankly at this scene. As early as when they were training, they already knew that Di Beichen and the others were extremely close. However, they had never taken this to heart. This was because the friendship between cultivators was linked to benefits. How could there be true friendship? Looking at the emotions of Jiang Wenyan and the others in front of them, they felt as if their hearts had been ruthlessly struck by something. Their hearts trembled. That kind of hot-bloodedness made them inexplicably envious. It was clearly an act of courting death, but why was there an indelible envy in their hearts? If they were in Di Beichen's shoes, they were afraid that no one would do such a thing, right? They were all too clear that no one would be willing to risk everything for them. Even if they stubbornly refused to admit it, they couldn't deceive themselves. This was the damn jealousy. Di Yujue and the others were also shocked, but more than that they were happy. Unknowingly, Bachin actually had such sincere friends. If they could return alive today, these people would be the most precious people in Bachin's life. They would also be honored guests of his family forever. Bachin looked at Jiang Wenyan and the others who had appeared beside him. Something flashed in his eyes. After his heart trembled, it seemed that a kind of emotion had reached his eyes from the bottom of his heart, making him feel a little hot. "Brother, we're here." Morong Jing and the others laughed. Bachin's voice was hoarse. Hey, don't be too moved. After this, we'll definitely ruthlessly slaughter you." Jiang Wenyan chuckled, but this smile was more complicated than usual. "Okay." Bachin nodded. "After this, you can slaughter me however you want." Linger, by Li Yin Che, Mo Yunjue, and Ao Lingxiao had already joined the battle. Their swords rose and fell without the slightest mercy. Since they were destined to be opponents, they could only press forward. Even if there was no road ahead, they would still carve out a bloody path. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the familiar and young faces in front of her, and felt an indescribable sense of pride. With so many people accompanying him on the road ahead, it was really a very happy thing. Right now she didn't dare to imagine the outcome. All she could think about was how to deal with the opponent in front of her. After being influenced by Bachin and the others, the darkness attribute cultivators, who were already hot-blooded, became even more excited. With so many brothers together, what did they have to fear? On the other hand, the guild's cultivators could feel the overwhelming aura of the other party, and they could not help but feel a little scared. As soon as his aura weakened, he couldn't even display his usual strength. His cultivation was clearly higher than the other parties, but they were evenly matched. "A bunch of lunatics," Lei Ming secretly spat. The scene in front of him made him very unhappy. His orders had always been obeyed and not disobeyed, but these people disobeyed his orders one after another, which made him extremely unhappy. "Since that's the case, all of you can go to hell." Lei Ming's figure flashed, and a tyrannical aura burst out. Without hesitation, he attacked a large group of darkness attribute cultivators. Bang! Chapter 6130. A mist of blood sprayed into the air, splashing onto the faces and bodies of Bachin and the others. Feeling the warm blood, everyone could not help but tremble. They looked up and saw that Lei Ming had personally made his move. The darkness-type cultivators had no way of retaliating against him. Damn it! When Xiren cursed, "This Lei Ming has really refreshed his understanding of shamelessness." Bachin's figure flashed and charged directly towards Lei Ming. He must stop Lei Ming. This fellow's power was much stronger than the darkness-type cultivators. As long as he made his move, no one would be able to resist at all. Even if it was just for a second, more lives would be lost at his hands. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also flashed over and looked at Lei Ming with a serious expression. The only way to stop this was to control the 5 guild masters. Only then would they be able to control the situation. Di Yujue, Di Lin Xian, and Lin Wenlan naturally understood the situation very well. Hence, they had already made their way to the high platform. Now they had thrown caution to the wind. After all, they were destined to be enemies. They had long forgotten each other's identities. Regardless of whether they made their move or not, after this, both sides would be enemies. Luo Qinghao and the others naturally went up to meet them. This time, they had completely fallen out with the Di family and the Lin family. However, they were still very confident. The influence of a guild was limitless. It was absolutely impossible for a mere few families to stop them. "Head of the Di family, you've made the most unwise decision." Luo Qinghao stared coldly at Di Yujue. Di Yujue chuckled. "Your decision is also very unwise. You should know that families can disappear at any time, but guilds will never fall." "You're right." Di Yujue nodded calmly. Seeing this, Luo Qinghao was a little surprised. He did not think that Di Yujue would agree with him without hesitation. However, Di Yujue's next words made his face turn ashen. Indeed, the guild will not fall, but the guild leader can be changed at any time. Unlike the Saint of Light, the guild master did not have to fulfill as many requirements as the Saint of Light. If a guild master fell, a new guild master would definitely take his place. So, you want to kill me? Di Yujue was non-committal. Same here. These guys bullied his son in front of him. How could he swallow this anger? Even if the D family had to pay a huge price, he was going to make these bastards disappear from this world. As the patriarch of an aristocratic family, he had seen the rise and fall of too many forces. People often thought that no one could replace them, but they didn't know that there were too many people who could replace them. How could a mere guild leader make him so nervous? He would never hesitate to kill. Seeing Di Yujue admit it so calmly, Luo Qinghao only felt as if there was a force strangling his neck. It was extremely uncomfortable, and he couldn't breathe. All of them were fucking lunatics. Perverts. Di Yujue did not give Luo Qinghao any time to hesitate. He had to kill Luo Qinghao as soon as possible because Beichen was still under pressure from Lei Ming. He wanted to deal with Lei Ming directly, but this Luo Qinghao took the initiative to stand in front of him. Since this was the case, he could only kill him first. Luo Qinghao did not dare to relax. Di Yujue's strength was well known. He was definitely not weaker than him. Chapter 6131. Stop. As Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang appeared in front of Lei Ming, he put away his hand and stared mockingly at the two young figures in front of him. You want to stop me? You're not qualified. A cultivator at the Heavenly Moon Realm could indeed look down on the heroes of the younger generation, but it was clearly not enough in front of elders like them. Which one of them was not a genius? Since they had lived for so many years, their cultivation was naturally not something that young people could compare to. Then let's try. Di Beichen narrowed his eyes, and his expression was unprecedentedly serious. Previously, when he had exchanged blows with Lei Ming, he had already sensed the latter's terrifying aura. Indeed, based on his current level of power, it was indeed not enough. However, he only needed to buy time. As long as his father and the others could solve the problem at hand, they would come and help. Even if stalling for time was difficult, at least it was better than sacrificing so many innocent lives every second. Young master, Huang Futing could not help but cry out. He understood that the young master's cultivation was much more powerful than theirs. However, he was still young after all. Against Lei Ming, he had no chance at all. Almost instinctively, Huang Futing wanted to rush to Di Beichen's side. He was the god that they revered. However, the sounds of killing filled the sky, and there were battlefields everywhere. The crowd around him had turned into a flood, so it was not easy for him to rush over. Hee. Lei Ming laughed impudently. However, in the next second, his smile suddenly disappeared and his gloomy face was filled with bloodlust and disgust. Coincidentally, I see that you're not very happy. I'll take this opportunity to send you to your death. As long as you're not around, these fellows are a bunch of loose sand. I don't have to worry about any unforeseen events. He was almost certain that if Di Beichen was allowed to continue developing, based on his methods, he would become an extremely terrifying existence in the future. Even if the Dark Sanctuary was not successfully established, based on these fellows' fanatical worship of Di Beichen, once they become his subordinates, Di Beichen's influence would be extremely terrifying in the future. Just like how Jiang Wenyan and the others were willing to give up these impossible things for him. There was something strange about this kid. If he was still alive, then the next person who could lead all the dark-type cultivators to destroy the upper realm would be him. He could not allow such a person to continue to exist. As soon as he finished speaking, Lei Ming's palm suddenly struck out. This attack came without any warning. Di Beichen was the first to react, but it was too late to dodge. Left with no other choice, he could only take the blow head-on. Bang! Boundless energy waves spread out from where the two of them were clashing. The surrounding cultivators were affected by this energy wave, and it was as if there was a huge force pushing them away. In the blink of an eye, a vacuum was formed between Di Beichen and Lei Ming. Receiving this palm, Di Beichen's figure also retreated for a while. He retreated more than 10 meters before stopping his footsteps. His handsome face was flushed red. He swallowed the sweet taste in his mouth and looked at Lei Ming with deep eyes. Sure enough, the difference in strength between them was really too great. Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang rushed to Di Beichen's side and asked with concern, "How are you?" Lei Ming was determined to kill them. Naturally, he would not show any mercy when he attacked. An all-out attack was not easy to take. Di Beichen waved his hand, his gaze firm. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Chapter 6132. They were at a disadvantage now. The longer the battle dragged on, the greater their losses would be. Therefore, the best solution was to end the battle as soon as possible. Observing the situation carefully, Di Yujue and the other elders were locked in a fierce battle with the 5 guild leaders. Being in a high position, their strength was naturally not to be underestimated. The stronger their strength, the longer it would take to determine the winner, because both sides had their own trump cards. However, for the darkness attribute cultivators who were not strong enough, they could lose their lives if they were not careful. The battle had only started for a short while, but there were already many cultivators who had fallen. Although many of them were cultivators from the guilds, there were more darkness attribute cultivators. Beichen, the 5 guilds have quite a number of people. We have to turn the situation around. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. The suppression in numbers did not affect the high-level cultivators much, but it still had a huge impact on the outcome of the battle between ordinary cultivators. Di Beichen nodded. In the next moment he raised his voice and said, "All darkness attribute cultivators retreat to the back." The sudden order caused everyone present to feel strange. The battle was so intense right now. Was he planning to escape? Huang Futing and the others did not understand the purpose of this order. However, they would definitely obey Di Beichen's order. Almost immediately, everyone subconsciously retreated to the back. The cultivators from the guilds were naturally unwilling to let the other party escape. After they reacted, they immediately chased after them. However, for Di Beichen, even if it was only a short time, it was enough. His hands flipped rapidly, and a complicated seal appeared. Trap array. A huge trap array suddenly appeared, enveloping the cultivators from the guilds. The moment Di Beichen set up the array, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flew out, and threw the poison powder in her hand into the array. The white powder fluttered in the air, and drifted among the cultivators. The people who were chasing suddenly realized that there was an invisible wall in front of them, blocking their path. There was no way for them to cross it. Most importantly, the poisonous powder that appeared right after made it impossible for them to escape. Array formation? Lei Ming's pupils constricted, and his voice was filled with unconcealable surprise. She had always heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had many tricks up her sleeves, but she never knew that Di Beichen was actually an array master. Nangong Yuqing looked at the trapped people in front of him, and his mood became even more complicated. He remembered that he had seen Di Beichen use a formation in the Immortal Cloud secret realm. Under that terrible attack, it was only by relying on Di Beichen's array that they were able to survive that difficult period of time and save their lives. Now that Di Beichen once again displayed the array formation, the scale of this array formation was much stronger than before. It could be seen that Di Beichen's array formation had improved a lot during this period of time. After the group of cultivators were trapped, they immediately launched their attacks at the array formation. As long as they could break this array formation, they would be able to escape. Bailey Hongzhuang was the most outstanding doctor in the upper realm, so the effects of the poison powder she had concocted were naturally not to be underestimated. No one dared to stay here for too long. If they stayed for even a moment longer, they might lose their lives. Chapter 6133. Under the frenzied bombardment of the cultivators, ripples began to appear at the edges of the trapping array. Clearly, the trapping array could not suppress everyone for too long. Although the effects of my poison aren't bad, there's no wind in the trapping array, so the spread speed is slower. I can only kill a portion of them. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression remained solemn. She was very clear about the effects of her poison. These cultivators were not weak, and had a certain level of resistance to the poison. However, the cultivators at the front would not be able to keep their lives. We have to hurry. His handsome face was filled with an unprecedented seriousness. In a race against time like this, every second had to be fought for. All darkness-type cultivators, transfer your darkness-type energy to me, Debachin shouted. All the darkness-type cultivators immediately surrounded Debachin. No one understood what Debachin was trying to do. Even if Debachin needed their power, they did not hesitate. Huang Futing placed his hand on the back of Debachin's hand. One cultivator after another passed on their power in the same way. Has Debachin gone mad? Doesn't he know how dangerous this is? Luo Qinghao and the others had also noticed the changes in the battlefield while they were fighting. Most importantly, this scene was too shocking. There were already quite a number of darkness-type cultivators. At this moment, everyone had gathered together and transferred their power to Debachin. How terrifying would the power that Debachin had gathered be? However, they were not too worried about how much power Debachin would release. This was because this method of transferring power was not easy to carry out. Unless there was an absolute tacit understanding between the cultivators, transferring power into each other's body would only cause the other's power to become chaotic. Not to mention how complicated the current environment was. Just the fact that there were so many cultivators. How was it possible for all of them to have no distracting thoughts and completely trust each other? This was something that was impossible to accomplish in the first place. The cultivators who were originally sitting below the high platform did not leave. Instead, they retreated some distance before coming back to watch the battle. This result was extremely important to the entire upper realm. Xiao Sudong looked at the pitch-black darkness in front of him. His mood was extremely complicated. At the very least, Debachin's courage was unparalleled among the younger generation. If it were him, he wouldn't dare to do such a thing. As the energy continued to flow into Debachin's body, Lei Ming could sense that Debachin's aura was gradually rising. This kind of improvement was very fast, and even he could not help but feel shocked by the surging power. How is this possible? Lei Ming was dumbfounded. With so many cultivators, it was already good enough that they didn't suffer from qi deviation when transmitting their powers together. However, they actually did it. They transferred endless dark energy to Debachin, increasing the power that Debachin could control. This kind of thing that seemed impossible to others was actually happening right in front of him. The more outstanding Debachin's performance was, the more he felt that he could not let this child live. Otherwise, it would definitely cause immeasurable trouble in the future. Chapter 6134. Even until now, he still did not understand what Debachin was planning to do by accumulating so much power. However, he vaguely had an ominous premonition, as if what Debachin was about to do was very frightening. As the president of the Lightning Attribute Guild, he had walked on the edge of life and death many times. Naturally, he had a premonition of danger. Originally, with Debachin's cultivation, he should not have been a threat to him. However, now that he had sensed something, it was very frightening. In the next moment, Lei Ming charged directly towards Debachin, who was in the crowd. He wanted to stop everything. As long as Debachin's breathing was unstable and he went berserk, everything would be over. Once Debachin fell, then all the people who had gathered here would have no meaning. This was because these people were all connected with Debachin as the center. After seeing Lei Ming's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flashed and blocked Lei Ming's path. A dazzling smile appeared on her delicate face. Her serene eyes were unfathomable, vaguely revealing extreme coldness and murderous intent. President Lei, your opponent now is me. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's sudden appearance, Lei Ming's eyes narrowed and a ruthless light flashed across them. Bailey Hongzhuang, I'm giving you some face because you're the saint of the light. Don't be so shameless. When President Liu had returned yesterday, he had clearly told everyone that he had never agreed to Bailey Hongzhuang's resignation from her position as the saint of the light. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was alive, she would always be the saint of the light. This was something that would never change. Therefore, he did not want to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, President Liu would definitely fly into a rage, and things would become even more difficult to deal with. Bailey Hongzhuang laughed softly. I don't need you to give me any face at all because you're not even human in my eyes. In the past, When she first came into contact with the power of darkness and saw the skeleton army, she felt that these guys were cold, heartless, and cruel. However, after meeting Lei Ming, she realized that some sanctimonious people were the real beasts. Among those skeletons, it was unknown how many had lost their lives because of the selfish actions of these fellows. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were fierce and did not give Lei Ming any face at all. She had completely angered Lei Ming. Since you're courting death, I'll send you on your way. Lei Ming ruthlessly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang with his palm. He would kill Bailey Hongzhuang first as interest. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flashed. Her toes touched the ground, and her body flew back as light as a swallow. As Bailey Hongzhuang dodged the attack and landed on the ground, Thunder realized that a mysterious black and red door had opened behind Bailey Hongzhuang. This door appeared out of nowhere on the ground, exuding a terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate. Even if it was him, he could not help but tremble from this aura. What kind of method was this? Lei Ming was dumbfounded. No matter if it was Di Beichen or Bailey Hongzhuang, he could not understand the methods that these two people had used. Roar! An earth-shattering roar sounded from within the door. Following that, a huge and mighty figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. It was a terrifying demonic beast that no one had ever seen before. Chapter 6135. Hard black scales covered his body. His body was obviously huge, but he didn't look clumsy at all. On the contrary, his smooth lines and muscular body revealed his explosive strength. Roar! With a loud roar, it opened its ferocious mouth, revealing razor-sharp teeth that made one's heart tremble. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but look at this ancient beast. There was only one thought in their minds. It was too terrifying. What kind of demonic beast is this? Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but look at the elders of his family. According to his understanding of demonic beasts, he had never seen any description of them. Hearing Nangong Yuqing's question, the Nangong family head shook his head with a pale face. This demonic beast, I've never heard of it. After the end of the Immortal Cloud Secret Realm, the Nangong family had understood from Nangong Yuqing's description that Bailey Hongzhuang had a method that no one else had. She knew summoning techniques. She could summon powerful demonic beasts to fight. When he first heard this, although he was surprised by this method, he didn't take it to heart. This was because even if they didn't know how it was done, no matter what kind of martial technique it was, there would always be some side effects when one fought someone of a higher cultivation level. It was definitely not easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to use all of this. Moreover, the demonic beasts she summoned wouldn't be much stronger than her. It wasn't until he saw this scene with his own eyes that he realized how stupid his previous judgment was. This kind of power was beyond their understanding. It turned out that this world had so many methods that they didn't know about. I've never heard of it either. The Chu family head couldn't help but say. At this moment, they didn't care if they would lose face or not. All of this had brought them too much shock. Hongzhuang, good job. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of excitement. Among all the women, she admired Bailey Hongzhuang the most. This kind of ability was enough to leave a group of self-proclaimed geniuses in the dust. Huang Futing and the others were also shocked by this scene. Looking at the mountain-like demonic beast, they couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They thought that the madam they knew was already very abnormal, but now it seemed that they were still too naive. The real madam wasn't a human, but a god. Sister, I'm coming too. Bailey Yanche leapt to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, his handsome, almost demonic face exuding a heart-stopping beauty. The corners of his lips rose slightly, and in the next moment, in front of everyone's eyes, his figure suddenly changed. Roar! It was also a heaven-shaking roar. By Li Yan's roar, the roar of the demonic beast's roar, and majesty. This demonic beast's demonic beast's roar. Demonic beast's est. As for the demonic beasts that were flying in the air, they were in an even more miserable state. They were originally proudly fighting for their masters when they suddenly heard the Beast King's voice, which was filled with endless deterrence. For a moment, they couldn't even control their flight. Their bodies fell from the sky, and like the other demonic beasts, they submitted to Bai Li Yanche. Chapter 6136. Please enter the text. This sudden turn of events once again shocked everyone present. They had never seen such a scene of thousands of beasts worshipping before. Some cultivators tried their best to control their contracted beasts to stand up, but at this moment, they seemed to have lost control of their contracted beasts. The contracted beasts turned a deaf ear to their commands. How could this be? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They had been with their contracted beasts for so long, and this had never happened before. At this moment, it was as if these beasts were no longer their contracted beasts. Immediately after, everyone realized that the originally extremely handsome Bai Li Yanche had transformed into a mystical beast. This mystical beast was also one that everyone had never seen before. Its body was not as large as a mountain, but it was still an awe-inspiring existence. Its black and white fur covered its entire body. Its soft and shiny fur was like a work of art. Its streamlined lines were filled with explosive power. It was just standing quietly beside Bai Li Hongzhuang, but a noble and supreme aura was already exuding from it. On its forehead, a majestic and dazzling king word appeared clearly on its head, exuding endless majesty and awe. Beast King. After a short moment of shock, everyone immediately recognized its identity. Such a noble aura, and the deterrence of a king made all the mystical beasts willingly submit to it. Apart from the Beast King, no other mystical beast could do this. In the early years, there were people who knew that Bai Li Hongzhuang's contracted beast was not simple. There were also people who recognized the identity of the Beast King, but because they had never seen White Lion in action, everyone did not pay too much attention to it. At this moment, when this scene truly appeared in front of everyone, they finally realized how terrifying the Beast King was. And Bai Li Hongzhuang had a Beast King as her contracted beast. How enviable was that? It's actually the Beast King. Lei Ming stared blankly at that figure. At this moment, he did not know what words to use to express the shock he had received today. It was already a rare sight to be able to witness one of these shocking scenes on a normal day. However, today, it was happening one after another without stopping. As the guild leader of the Thunder Attribute Guild, he had always felt that he was knowledgeable. Even in the entire upper realm, there were not many people who were more knowledgeable than him. It was just a few youngsters in front of him, but they had already refreshed his understanding. Aren't these youngsters' luck a little too good? As expected of Bai Li Hongzhuang. What a pervert. Xu Yingming couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He had already seen how powerful Bai Li Hongzhuang was. This woman was truly gifted. Her ability had always been inferior to any man, and she was already terrifyingly strong. Father, who do you think will win today? Suddenly, Xu Yingming turned to look at Chu Yifeng. Chu Yifeng stared at Xu Yingming. With his understanding of his son, with just this question, he had already guessed his son's thoughts. Could it be that you want to? Xu Yingming nodded. Father, if your thoughts are the same as mine, then stepping forward at this time will be the best way to obtain their friendship. The icing on the cake would never leave a lasting impression on others. Only providing help in times of need was a true friendship. Chapter 6137. Please enter the main text. Jiang Wenyan, Morong Jing and Chen Feng. He had known these three for many years. Before meeting Di Beichen and Bai Li Hongzhuang, they were never people who ignored the big picture. However, after seeing them rush out, he felt that there was nothing wrong with their actions. Perhaps everyone believed that such a battle would be won by the 5 great guilds. However, as a youngster, he felt that nothing was impossible to overturn. As long as these 5 guild leaders were dead, the new guild leaders might not necessarily oppose all this. Moreover, hadn't the previous situation been clearly explained? Based on the change in expression of Bai Li Hongzhuang and the others, it was clear that President Liu and President Song had agreed to this. However, something had happened that they didn't know about. It was definitely related to the 5 guild leaders. Even if the 5 guild leaders didn't all die, as long as 2 new guild leaders with different opinions were born, the situation would be completely reversed. Although this gamble was risky, if they succeeded, the benefits they would reap would not be small. He had some understanding of the D family's character. Moreover, Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were not people who would forget righteousness at the sight of benefits. They were tired of the hypocrisy between the family and their allies. If one day something really happened to the Chu family, would those allies really stand out to help them? From today's situation it could be seen. However, if they stood out at this time, the Di family would definitely stand out to help them. That was the most important thing, wasn't it? Chu Yifeng looked at his son's resolute gaze, and hesitation appeared on his face. Yingming, this matter is not as simple as you think. If we make a mistake, the Chu family will be consigned to eternal damnation. Chu Yingming looked at the scene in front of him, and a confident smile appeared on his face. Although Di Baichen and the others don't have the advantage, I feel that they will win. Facing a huge demon beast and a beast king that he had never seen before, Lei Ming's expression was somewhat unsightly. The beast king's deterrence was not fake. Even as a human, he could feel that terrifying deterrence. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that the beast king's current strength was still not enough. Otherwise, today's situation would have been very dangerous. However, the appearance of the beast king directly suppressed all the demon beasts on their side, making them unable to do anything. Helpless, Lei Ming could only say, "Recall all the demon beasts." The group of cultivators couldn't help but recall their contracted beasts. That shivering appearance of theirs made them look like cowards. It was too shameful. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes rippled with a sneer. From the moment they decided to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, they had already prepared for the worst, war. Therefore, even if it really happened, they wouldn't be completely flustered. The only thing they didn't expect was that Lei Ming intended to kill all the darkness attribute cultivators. However, this had also strengthened their resolve to establish the sacred assembly. Just as Lei Ming was about to make a move, a cold voice suddenly sounded out. "I'm coming." Ling Er's elegant figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. However, she didn't waste any time, and directly transformed into her dragon form in midair. In the sky, a huge white dragon circled around, contrasting against the blue sky and white clouds. Its figure was so beautiful, but the power it emitted was equally terrifying. Heavens, it's a real dragon. Bailey Hongzhuang's two contracted beasts are actually so abnormal. Chapter 6138. As they stared at the demonic beasts in the sky and on the ground, the crowd was at a loss for words. As cultivators who have been heavily nurtured by their families, they all have pretty good contracted beasts. However, in the face of Bailey Hongzhuang's two contracted beasts, they had been reduced to dregs in an instant. The fact that a beast king had become a contracted beast was already an inconceivable thing to everyone. Similarly, only a few top-notch cultivators have been able to turn a dragon into a contracted beast. Aside from reading about this in ancient books, no one has ever seen this happen before. The dragon clan was a very powerful clan, and would not stoop so low as to become a contracted beast of a human. Normally, it was already very difficult to even meet a dragon clan member. What more to make one a contracted beast? However, something like this had happened, and all of them were Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts. How could they not be envious? Forget about the other organizations. Even the Di family and the Lin family were shocked by this. This was because when Linger had first appeared, she had always been in her human form. Furthermore, based on the way she interacted with Bailey Hongzhuang, no one would have thought that she would actually be a contracted beast. That's really awesome. Jiang Wenyan laughed softly. In the past, he had never felt that he could not compare to a woman until he met Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang silently glanced at Di Baichen, who was standing behind the demonic beasts. At this moment, Di Baichen was preparing for the most important step. He must not be disturbed at all. Then, she noticed that the trapping array was becoming weaker and weaker under the cultivators' attacks. It looked like it was going to collapse at any moment. At the same time, a large number of cultivators had fallen in the trapping array. However, once these cultivators break free, they would immediately attack the dark-type cultivators. Hence, before Di Baichen completes his task, she must stall for time and stop him. How could Lei Ming not see through Bailey Hongzhuang's plan? After seeing Bai Shi and the others reveal their identities, he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was most likely stalling for time. He had to destroy everything as soon as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang sensed the powerful aura coming from the front and ordered, "Go!" This contract beast was a demonic beast that she had summoned after her strength had increased. Now, with the improvement of her cultivation base, her spiritual sense was also constantly improving. She was very clear that in this kind of battle, what really mattered was strength and not quantity. So she used all her strength to summon the strongest demonic beast. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the demonic beast charged towards Lei Ming. Its huge eyes were filled with endless vicissitudes and indifference. The human in front of it was an eyesore to it. A fly like this should be swatted to death. As the giant beast began to move, everyone felt the ground tremble. With every step it took, the ground trembled, but strangely, its speed was not slow at all. Bang! Lei Ming's palm landed on the giant beast's body. He wanted to see how strong this giant beast was. After receiving Lei Ming's attack, a hint of emotion appeared in the giant beast's eyes. As if it could feel the pain, the giant beast roared and stared at Lei Ming with a vicious look in its eyes. Slap! The giant beast swung its large palm. Even though Lei Ming did not receive the attack head-on, the residual force was still very uncomfortable for him. Chapter 6139. Lei Ming retreated dozens of meters, his feet touching the ground repeatedly, before he came to a stop. "Guildmaster Lei, are you all right?" Feng Yuxian looked at Lei Ming worriedly, her eyes filled with worry. Lei Ming raised his hand and said with a pale face, "I'm fine." Although he did not suffer any serious injuries, the attack just now was enough to make him lose face. What kind of monster is this? How could it be so powerful? Lei Ming kept thinking. He had no understanding of the monster's habits and could not find its weakness. Naturally, it would be more difficult to deal with it. As the giant monster moved, he once again saw Di Baichen's situation clearly. Di Baichen's hands were constantly moving, and one by one mysterious and complex seals quietly appeared. These hand seals were different from the hand seals used to execute martial skills. They carried a type of profound and special energy, like obscure and difficult to understand runes, or a type of special profundity that far exceeded the scope of their understanding. Dense dark energy lingered around Di Baichen, and all the dark attribute cultivators seemed to have fallen into a strange environment. Was it funny? They were clearly in the middle of a battle, but these people could enter such a mysterious state. No matter what Di Baichen was planning, he had to break it. However, his strength alone was not enough. With that thought, Lei Ming turned to look at Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongqing behind him and said, "What are you hesitating for? Why aren't you making a move?" Although the cultivators from the Xiao and Jun families had already attacked, Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongqing did not make a move. After all, the two of them were the heads of aristocratic families. It was not right for them to get involved in a battle between guilds. However, after hearing Lei Ming's call, the two of them no longer hesitated. Their figures flashed and appeared beside Lei Ming. "Family head Xiao, family head Jun. All of our guilds will remember your sacrifice today," Thunder said. "Guildmaster Lei, you're too kind." Xiao Yanlong was full of smiles. "No matter what you need us to do, we'll do our best. I'll block this giant monster. You guys find a way to break Di Baichen's trick." Lei Ming lowered his voice. "This Di Baichen is very strange. I don't know what kind of sorcery he's using. If he succeeds, I'm afraid it'll be very troublesome. Don't worry, leave this to us." A trace of hatred appeared in Jun Hongqing's eyes. He was more than willing to leave this matter to him. His son had died at Di Baichen's hands, and he had always wanted revenge. Now that the opportunity was in front of him, was it not? Lei Ming heaved a sigh of relief. With two more helpers, the pressure on them would undoubtedly be reduced by a great deal. Of course. Today. Looking at the old and ferocious face in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with disgust. This old fellow has always been a stumbling block on their path. He goes back on his words, uses all sorts of tricks, and is extremely despicable. Master Xiao, why isn't Xiao Soa here this time? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly sneered. If my calculations are correct, Xiao Soa should be 5 months pregnant by now, right? Once she said that, Xiao Yanlong's expression changed. He rebuked her angrily. What nonsense are you spouting? Chapter 6140. She had never liked to tear down a person's last layer of cloth, but when she met someone who was completely shameless, she would find that such an action was simply superfluous. It would be a waste to give such a person face. When everyone present heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, they were suddenly shocked. I haven't seen Xiao Soa for 2 days. I thought it was very strange, but I didn't expect that there would be such a thing. 5 months. Carefully calculating the time, it matches the time in the ancient battlefield. But in the ancient battlefield, could it be that Jun Lingxuan's body was already possessed? Could it be that Xiao Soa was already pregnant when she entered the ancient battlefield? Or, the cultivators who had been to the ancient battlefield were all imagining things at this moment, because the time was too sensitive. Nangong Yuqing felt as if he had been hit by a heavy blow. He thought that Jun Lingxuan wouldn't come back, and that there would be infinite possibilities between him and Xiao Soa. But he didn't expect to hear this news. Even if he hated Bailey Hongzhuang, he also understood that the latter had never spread rumors about this kind of thing. If all of this was true, then counting the days, Nangong Yuqing's face suddenly turned pale, as if he couldn't believe what he had guessed. Hearing the discussions in the audience, Xiao Yanlong couldn't help but feel anxious. Soa has been in seclusion recently. I don't know where you heard this nonsense from. Is that so? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. I don't know what she is doing in seclusion. Why has she been in seclusion for so long? After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her gaze to Jun Hongcheng. Family head Jun. I don't know if you know that Jun Lingxuan's body was already possessed not long after he entered the ancient battlefield? Jun Hongcheng was stunned. He had heard this news from other people, but with Xiao Soa and Xiao Yanlong's assurance, he had never doubted it. However, looking at the young people below the stage who seemed to be deep in thought, he suddenly felt that he had made a mistake somewhere. Someone as calculative as Jun Hongcheng only needed to do a casual calculation to understand the real reason for everyone's behavior. His heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a sharp sword, and an indescribable fear spread in his heart. If all of this was true, then it was too terrifying. Xiao Yanlong noticed the change in Jun Hongcheng's expression and hurriedly explained, Brother Jun, don't be instigated by her words. It's not what you think it is. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would say something like that at this moment. But he had to admit that her words were indeed lethal. In just a short moment, Jun Hongcheng's eyes were bloodshot. He stared at Xiao Yanlong and did not answer the question. Instead, he directly said, Kill them first. For the future of the Jun family, the Di family, and the Lin family must be destroyed today. As for the other matters, he would understand them properly when he gets back. Xiao Yanlong's heart thumped when he noticed the look on Jun Hongcheng's face. If this had been in the past, only Bailey Hongzhuang had said that and Jun Hongcheng would not have believed it. However, the reactions of so many people present had undoubtedly supported Bailey Hongzhuang. He really needed to think of a way. Bailey Hongzhuang, I'm going to kill you. Chapter 6141. Regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth or not, it was unforgivable for her to say such words in front of so many people. Seeing Jun Hongcheng's performance, Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised. Perhaps to Jun Hongcheng, the truth was not as important as his reputation, but it was because of his unscrupulous methods that his family had fallen into such a state. Jun Hongcheng waved his hand, and the vigorous metal attribute energy transformed into a sharp sword, enveloping Bailey Hongzhuang's vital points. He wanted to see just how strong this girl was. She had always been a stumbling block in their family's path forward. This time, he would completely remove this obstacle. Looking at the sharp sword aura, Bailey Hongzhuang held the thought-severing sword in her hand, and was not afraid in the slightest. She raised her right hand slightly, and the sharp sword in her hand flashed, and an almost invisible ray of light suddenly swept out. Some people did not even see that ray of light clearly, but they saw that the sharp sword formed by Jun Hongcheng's energy had actually shattered in midair. Following that, Jun Hongcheng's body leaned to the side, as if he was dodging an attack. Seeing this scene, everyone looked at each other in dismay. The exchange just now had happened too quickly, and they had not seen what had happened clearly. Jun Hongcheng's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. When he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang again, the resentment in his eyes was even more intense. This girl was obviously not of the metal attribute, but the sword aura that she had condensed was actually so strong. Even he had to be careful of this terrifying sword aura. This sword aura was like that of a master swordsman who had gone through thousands of tempering to condense an incomparably solid sword aura. It was obviously just a simple sword aura, but its destructive power was not at all as simple as a killing move condensed by an ordinary cultivator. No wonder his son had been defeated by them one after another. This Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed strange. Bailey Hongzhuang's movements did not stop because of this. Previously in the abandoned immortal forest, they had spent a very long time practicing this move. Fortunately, this result was also gratifying. At least in terms of sword aura, even Jun Hongcheng was no match for her. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. She waved her long sword and streaks of terrifying sword aura continuously shot out like a storm towards Jun Hongcheng's vital points. Jun Hongcheng did not dare to underestimate it. The energy in his body surged out and formed a barrier to block Bailey Hongzhuang's attack. However, the sword aura was simply too fierce, and its penetrating power was too terrifying. Therefore, Jun Hongcheng could only condense another barrier to stack it. Only then could he block the endless sword aura that was constantly shooting towards him. As a joke of the family, of course, as the head of the family. As the head. Of. So the head of the Jun family's strength is actually so weak? I thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was in danger, but now it seems that the situation is not the case. The head of the Jun family was exaggerating, but I never thought that he only has this much strength. No wonder the Jun family is declining. The crowd sighed and shook their heads. This kind of anticlimactic situation was too much of a slap in the face. Faced with the crowd's mockery, Jun Hongcheng could not say anything. If these people were in his situation, they would know what kind of feeling this was. Chapter 6142. Xiao Yanlong was the closest to them. He understood Jun Hongcheng's difficult situation. However, no one would believe him if he were to tell them about this. Initially, he had wanted to help Jun Hongcheng. However, under the current circumstances, if he were to help, he would be ridiculed by the crowd as well. For the sake of his own reputation, he decided to target Bai Lianche and Ling Er instead. Even though these two fellows' cultivation levels were not very high, one had to admit that the Beast King and the Dragon Clan's powers were not to be underestimated. Ling Er and Bai Lianche looked at each other. Without any hesitation, both of them charged forward. Boom! The divine dragon swings its tail. It swept wildly with an extremely violent force. The crowd felt as if a hurricane had swept past them. Xiao Yanlong's figure flashed. The Dragon Clan's most terrifying aspect was their power. The dragon's tail was the most powerful part of their body. Once he was swept by the tail, even with his powers he would not feel good. Just as Xiao Yanlong had dodged Ling Er's attack, Bai Lianche's attack was as swift as lightning. It pounced forward like a cheetah. Its cold, sharp teeth seemed as if they could bite Xiao Yanlong's neck off at any time. It emitted a terrifying chill. As the master of an aristocratic family, Xiao Yanlong's powers were naturally not to be underestimated. After a brief moment of shock, he regained his senses. The two mystical beasts' combat powers were not to be underestimated, but his methods were not to be underestimated either. Compared to Di Beichen's killing move, they had to destroy it as soon as possible. Vigorous primary energy exploded from Xiao Yanlong's body, and the power of the wood attribute suddenly appeared. A green, lustrous power appeared in his hands. At that moment, the crowd felt as if a life force was circling around Xiao Yanlong. The wood attribute was not the most powerful among the many attributes. However, each type of power had its own unique characteristics. Once used properly, the wood attribute was also a very difficult attribute to deal with. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Countless vines surged out from under Xiao Yanlong's feet and circled around his body. It was as if there were countless hands, a group of demons dancing wildly. Xiao Yanlong narrowed his eyes, and the vines directly rushed towards Bai Lian-che. It was clearly a vine, but when it moved forward, it was like a nimble snake. Its speed was astonishing. Looking at the vines, Bai Lian-che's gaze also became a bit more serious. He had seen such vines before. Back in the immortal cloud mystic realm, there was a strange tree full of such vines. Once entangled, not only would he be unable to move, he might even be strangled to death. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The vines were like flexible hands, constantly attacking Bai Lian-che. Helpless, Bai Lian-che could only carefully avoid these vines. This was because once he tripped over one of the vines, there would be countless vines that would wrap around him. With the tenacity of these vines, it was too difficult to break them. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed the countless vines behind Xiao Yanlong and could not help but feel a chill run down her spine. She had seen what attribute cultivators use this technique before, but compared to Xiao Yanlong's, it was like a small child in the presence of a great sorcerer. Whether it was the number of vines or their tenacity, it could not be compared. When Ling saw that Bai Lian-che was unable to break through the vine's encirclement, she immediately swept her dragon tail again. The powerful force swept aside many of the vines, but at the same time, many of the vines had wrapped around her dragon tail. Xiao Yanlong's eyes were filled with a sinister look. The corners of his lips were slightly raised, and his smile was vicious and bloodthirsty. Chapter 6143. Ling, who was in mid-air, felt a terrifying force coming from the dragon's tail. It was trying to pull her down from mid-air. She struggled with all her might, trying to shake off the vines. However, the vines' strength and tenacity were so shocking that she could not shake them off at all. More vines wrapped around her and continued to pull her down. The crowd was aghast when they saw this. How terrifying was the vine's strength to be able to pull the dragon down from mid-air. Ling, Bai Lian-che noticed the situation, and a ruthless look appeared in its eyes. In the next moment, its claws became even sharper, and a surging and terrifying power emerged from its claws. Bai Lian-che's figure quickly charged forward, and its claws attacked the vines that were pulling the dragon's tail. You're overestimating yourself. Xiao Yanlong's eyes were filled with disdain. Mystical beasts were best at strength and defense. It would be easier for them to deal with cultivators of other attributes. However, when it came to wood-type cultivators, he could prevent them from getting close to him. Besides, he had been studying wood-type powers for many years. Unless it was a fire-type cultivator who was more powerful than him, most people would not be able to break through his attack. However, before the smile on Xiao Yanlong's face could fully bloom, he noticed that Bai Lian-che's claws had cut through his vines. Those sharp claws were like the sharpest blades in the world. How could this be? Xiao Yanlong was shocked. Even though he has never fought against a beast king, he has a lot of experience in fighting against mystical beasts. No mystical beast has ever been able to do this so easily. A smile appeared in Bai Lian-che's eyes when it saw the effect of its claws. Following the gradual increase in its cultivation, more and more of the things that were sealed in its memories had been revealed. A beast king's claws were the sharpest weapons. It was just that some control was still needed. How could it not be? Bai Lian-che sneered, and his figure quickly swept out. This time he did not need to worry about these vines. Because, as long as he destroyed these vines before they completely entangled him, it would be enough to approach Xiao Yanlong. He quietly glanced at Ling and gave her a look. Ling nodded slightly, indicating that there was no problem. After receiving Linger's affirmation, Bai Lian-che's figure flew out quickly, and its claws quickly slashed through the vines. Bang bang bang. The vines were quickly cut off by Li Yanche's sharp claws and fell to the ground. They no longer had their previous flexibility and strength. Noticing this scene, Xiao Yanlong also realized that this move might not be able to have the effect he expected. He could only fight head-on. When he saw Li Yanche's figure rapidly approaching him, Xiao Yanlong's figure flashed. He had already witnessed how sharp Li Yanche's claws were. If they landed on his body, his flesh would definitely be badly mutilated. Therefore, he must not engage in close combat with Li Yanche. However, just as Xiao Yanlong was about to dodge Li Yanche's approaching figure, a force suddenly lifted him into the sky. Bang! The dragon's tail swept nimbly. After sweeping Xiao Yanlong's figure into the air, Linger immediately swept her tail at him. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Xiao Yanlong, who was in the air, did not have the time to leverage himself before he was swept away by the dragon's tail. Chapter 6144. In an instant, Xiao Yanlong drew out all the strength in his body and tried his best to stabilize himself in the air. When facing a beast king, one must avoid close combat. Otherwise, its sharp claws would not be easy to deal with. Li Yanche had also noticed Xiao Yanlong's actions, and his figure immediately flew out. This damned old man had been making things difficult for his sister these days. No matter what, he had to make him bleed. Everyone only saw a black and white light flash by, and a trace of red appeared in the air, vaguely accompanied by Xiao Yanlong's scream. When the Beast King's figure reappeared in everyone's line of sight, they discovered a hideous wound on Xiao Yanlong's face. Sharp claws had cut through his skin, causing his flesh to be torn apart. It was a hideous and terrifying sight. His face seemed to be numb from the pain, and a strong smell of blood spread. Xiao Yanlong's gaze became more and more vicious. These people, who were nothing but ants in his eyes, had actually injured him. He wanted them all to pay the price. Patriarch Xiao was actually injured by Li Yanche. As far as I know, Li Yanche is only at the Heavenly Moon stage. Patriarch Xiao should at least be at the Flowing Sun stage, right? Nangong Yuqing was somewhat puzzled. Could it be that after transforming into a beast, one's strength would increase so much? Patriarch Nangong's face sank. Patriarch Xiao just didn't expect them to be able to break through the vine. He was caught off guard and suffered such a loss. However, he is now completely enraged. What's next is his true strength. Nangong Yuqing tilted his head and curiously asked, "Father, who do you think will win?" Although the Beast King and the dragon are peak existences among monster beasts, they are still young and haven't developed enough strength. If Xiao Yanlong attacks with all his strength, they will inevitably suffer. Nangong Yuqing understood. This was the right situation. Otherwise, it would be strange if the patriarch of an aristocratic family was so easily defeated. He had dealt with Di Beichen and the others for so long that he had some understanding of Li Yanche's strength. This was the right situation. Beast King Dragon Clan. Xiao Yanlong's lips curled into a cold arc. Today, I will have all of you die here. In the next moment, everyone noticed that Xiao Yanlong's aura had suddenly changed. The vigorous energy continued to spread. Even the cultivators who were watching from a distance could feel a terrifying aura, as if their lives were threatened. For a moment, many cultivators retreated again. They did not want to lose their lives just because they were spectators. Death requisition. Xiao Yanlong's aura suddenly became strange. The grass on the ground seemed to have lost its vitality in an instant. In the blink of an eye, it seemed to have gone through the process of germination and decay. As his life force was sucked away, Xiao Yanlong's aura became more and more terrifying. In the next moment, he suddenly stretched out his hands toward Li Yanche and Ling. What move is this? Xiao He was shocked. At this moment, Shi and Xiao Bai had grown in size and were blocking the cultivators in the trapping array. Before Di Beichen's trick was completed, they absolutely couldn't let these guys disturb him even a little bit. I don't know, but it's very dangerous. Xiao Bai's expression became ugly. It had taken a lot of effort to gain the upper hand, but now it felt a terrible danger. Chapter 6145. Diyujue could not help but feel anxious when he saw Xiao Yanlong unleash such a technique. He and Xiao Yanlong had been allies for so many years, so naturally, he was very familiar with the latter's methods. The life requisition technique was Xiao Yanlong's greatest killer move, and it was also the move that made him famous. The power of the wood attribute meant that it was full of vitality. However, since it could bring out vitality, it could naturally extract vitality as well. This alone was a very terrifying technique. Once a cultivator was controlled by Xiao Yanlong and had their vitality extracted, then there was really no way to save the situation. When he had seen Xiao Yanlong join the battle, he had been very angry. As long as the Di family did not perish today, he would not care about their old friendship. The Xiao family and the Jun family, these two malignant tumors, must be uprooted. Xiao Yanlong stared coldly at Diyujue. Despair, these little fellows will all die in my hands. Not a single one will be left alive. Diyujue's figure flashed, and he was ready to fight Xiao Yanlong head-on. However, Luo Qinghao was tightly entangled with Diyujue. In terms of strength, he was indeed no match for Diyujue. In a short period of time, he had been injured in many places. Fortunately, these injuries were not fatal. Once Xiao Yanlong had made a breakthrough, then the outcome of this battle would be decided. Therefore, no matter what, he could not let Diyujue take advantage of this opportunity to leave. Seeing that Luo Qinghao was like a dogskin plaster that he could not shake off, Dijujue's eyes flashed fiercely. Bang! A palm landed fiercely on Luo Qinghao's chest. Luo Qinghao's expression changed abruptly. Under this palm, he felt as if his internal organs were about to be displaced. However, he could not let Diyujue leave. This was because the current situation was very delicate. If any unforeseen circumstances were to occur, he was worried that he would lose. Once he lost, then they would become a complete joke. Even if the guild would not be affected, as the guild master, he would not have the face to continue sitting in this position. Damn it! Seeing that Luo Qinghao was still unwilling to let go of him under such circumstances, Diyujue was furious, but there was nothing he could do. Luo Qinghao's strength was indeed inferior to his, but it was not easy to kill him. If there was not enough time, it was impossible to do so. Even though Bai Liyan Che and Linger had never come into contact with Luo Qinghao's moves, they knew that this move was not so easy to break after listening to Diyujue's words. Be careful, Bai Liyan Che said. Linger nodded slightly, her gaze unprecedentedly serious. In fact, they had never underestimated the patriarchs of the aristocratic families. Just as the two of them were being cautious, a terrifying force suddenly came from the front, and the life force in their bodies seemed to be constantly being sucked away. The feeling of having one's life force being stripped away was extremely terrifying. It was as if one could sense the passing of one's life. It was horrifying. How can there be such a move? Bai Liyan Che's eyes were full of shock. He had come into contact with many methods on a daily basis, but there had never been a method that was so strange that it made people feel despair from the bottom of their hearts. Shangguan Yingying and the others rushed over when they saw this. Even if Xiao Yanlong's attack was not directed at them, but just standing beside Bai Liyan Che, they could feel the terrifying feeling. What should we do? Chapter 6146. When Xiren and Mo Yunjue had ugly expressions on their faces. This was also the first time they had encountered such a situation. Even though they had tried to use their primary energy to block it, they realized that it was completely useless. The life force in their bodies was constantly being sucked out. If this were to continue, they might even be sucked dry and turn into dried corpses. These fellows actually have the nerve to say that darkness-type cultivators are sinister and evil. Xiao Yanlong's move is the real sinister one. When Xiren was a little angry, the skeletons may look scary, but they were still able to fight against them. However, Xiao Yanlong's method was simply vicious to the extreme. Xiren, come to me. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Xiao Yanlong's situation and could not help but call out to Xiren. Xiren and Junhong Chung were both metal-type cultivators. After cultivating in the abandoned immortal forest over the past few days, Xiren's attainments in the metal type had reached the limit. Even though their cultivation levels were not on the same level, it should not be a problem for them to block Junhongcheng for a moment. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's voice, when Xiren's figure flashed and immediately appeared next to Bailey Hongzhuang. I'll leave this to you. Hold him off for a while. I have to think of a way to break this move. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was serious. When Xiren nodded, all right. When Junhongcheng saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had looked down on him and had casually handed him over to someone else to deal with, the anger in his heart rose. If it had not been for that strange sword energy, did she really think that he would have his hands and feet tied? If it had been anyone else, he could have easily slapped them to death. However, just as Junhongcheng was about to tear Xiren to shreds, he was shocked to see that when Xiren had unleashed the same sword energy, in a split second, Junhongcheng could not help but feel dazed for a moment. To be able to cultivate such a sword qi, one must have gone through a lot of tempering. It was definitely not something that could be easily cultivated. The fact that Bailey Hongzhuang had been able to reach this level of cultivation had already exceeded his expectations. However, now a random unknown fellow had appeared out of nowhere and was able to use this technique as well. When Shangguaninging saw that Xiren was dealing with Junhongcheng alone, she couldn't help but feel worried. She immediately moved closer. At this moment, Junhongcheng saw another woman unleash the same sword qi. Since when did such a sharp sword qi become an existence that could be found everywhere? Why did all three of them know how to do it? Xiren and Shangguaninging had no idea that their sword qi, which had been integrated into their instincts, had brought such a great shock to Junhongcheng. None of these aristocratic family heads were easy to deal with, so they had to be careful when dealing with them. However, compared to Xiao Yanlong's situation, this Junhongcheng seemed to be easier to deal with. However, they did not know that the power of this technique that Yu Hong had made them practice was not to be underestimated. Even if they were to fight against someone of a higher level, this technique would still bring great trouble to their opponents. When Bai Li Yanche and Linga noticed that the vitality in their bodies was fading away, they did not dare to stay any longer, and immediately decided to run away. However, Xiao Yanlong's hands seemed to have an extremely terrifying suction force. No matter how they tried to run away, it was useless. Their bodies seemed to be fixed in place, and they could not move at all. When Bailey Hongzhuang got closer to Bai Li Yanche, she also felt this terrifying power. This was simply an undefeatable existence. Chapter 6147. Do you remember what Zhonglimu taught us? Mo Yunjue suddenly asked. Hearing this, Bai Li Yanche seemed to have thought of something. The light calendar's power in his body quickly surged and formed a square-shaped barrier around his body. Initially, he had been resisting Xiao Yanlong's attacks. Now he was using all of his power to build a barrier. Under everyone's gaze, the barrier that enveloped Bai Li Yanche kept shrinking. As the barrier shrank, the aura coming from it became more and more shocking. The light that was released also became brighter and brighter. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with worry. She did not know if this would be effective. Previously, when Zhonglimu had practiced this on the waterfall, they had also learned it. However, after a few seniors had appeared, they had deepened their guidance on this foundation. Since then, they had understood that if they could control this power to a certain extent, they could use the most condensed power to form a layer of armor on the surface of their body. The effect of an armor made from power was very strong. Most importantly, if one could condense their power to a certain extent, they would be invulnerable to swords and spears. After knowing this, everyone tried to practice it. This was because they knew that cultivating this point was not only used to make armor, but also to increase one's control over power. Previously, when they had practiced sword qi, everyone had already had a certain foundation. Therefore, when they practiced this point, everyone's speed was much faster than before. However, they did not know if this would be effective in blocking Xiao Yanlong's attack. Linger immediately transformed into her human form and landed on the ground. Vigorous light calendar's power covered her body, As this power continued to condense and shrink, it finally formed a human-shaped armor on the surface of her body. It's effective. A trace of a smile appeared in Bai Lianche's eyes. As the armor became more and more condensed, the life force that was being extracted also became less and less. In the end, the effect was almost negligible. After Xiao Yanlong sensed this change, a thick sense of astonishment appeared in his eyes. This move of his was not only effective against cultivators with a low cultivation base, but even cultivators with a high cultivation base would have no choice but to surrender under this move. Back then, his illustrious reputation had spread because of this move, but he had never thought that it would fail when dealing with these little fellows. Di Yujue, who was originally very worried, heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Bai Lianche and the others had actually countered this move. These little guys were really amazing, and even he had to admire them. After seeing this scene, Luo Qinghao was completely dumbfounded. He desperately dragged Di Yujue out. In this short period of time, there were many more wounds on his body. However, Xiao Yanlong was actually blocked by these little fellows. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. Crack. As the first crack appeared on the trapping array, it was followed by more cracks like a spider web. In just a breath's time, the trapping array was completely shattered. The trapped cultivators rushed out one after another, full of hatred as they attacked Bailey Hongzhuang and the dark cultivators. Just one trapping array and poison had caused many of them to fall. Chapter 6148. When Xiao Yanlong saw that this move could not achieve the desired effect, his figure dashed out once again, and a fierce attack directly attacked Ling Er. Previously, Ling Er was in her dragon form, so it was not so easy for him to attack her directly. However, this was an excellent opportunity. Noticing Xiao Yanlong's attack, Ling Er's figure dashed out, and at the same time, a ball of elemental energy violently attacked. Bang! Xiao Yanlong's fist directly pierced through the ball of elemental energy, and his figure chased after her like a ghost. Since he had already attacked, he must take her life. Otherwise, it would be a real joke. Xiao Yanlong's speed was very fast, and the advantage of his powerful cultivation was completely displayed at this moment. After noticing this scene, Bai Lianche also quickly charged forward. However, Xiao Yanlong's speed was also very fast, and his reaction speed was not weak either. He clearly did not plan to pay attention to Bai Lianche, and planned to defeat them one by one. Ling Er's continuous attacks were all broken by Xiao Yanlong. Bang! Suddenly, Xiao Yanlong's palm landed on Ling Er's back. Ling Er's figure immediately flew out in a parabola, and landed heavily on the ground. Uft! A metallic taste came from her mouth and Ling Er clutched her chest, her breathing weakened. You go to hell first. The others will join you soon. A trace of cruelty flashed across Xiao Yanlong's eyes. These fellows were Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's wings. After this, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's emotions would be greatly affected. Just as Xiao Yanlong's attack was about to land, he suddenly turned around, because Bai Lianche's figure had already rushed over. I never thought that the relationship between these two contracted beasts would be so deep. Xiao Yanlong chuckled. You're clearly a beast king, yet you want to become a human's contracted beast. Don't you feel ashamed? It's better than shamelessly living in this world like a guy like you. Bai Lianche did not care about this at all. Thinking back to when he first knew about this moment, many people had such thoughts. However, he had never felt regretful about this. On the contrary, he felt that this was a gift from God. Otherwise, as a beast king, what was the point of living alone and powerful? Master, we can't hold them off. Xiao He and Xiao Bai tried their best to stop the cultivators, fearing that they would affect Di Beichen and the others. However, there were just too many of them. Even with the help of the cultivators from the Di family and Lin family, the cultivators from the 5 major guilds were just like ferocious beasts. After all, the Beast King, the Beast, he was the Beast King, the Beast, the Beast, Beast King. The Beast was the Beast King. This move was about to succeed. Huang Futing and the others looked at Di Beichen, who was in the center. Dense dark energy enveloped him, and a mysterious and obscure incantation came out of his mouth. At this moment, he felt that Di Baichen was not their young master, but a god that they looked up to. This kind of power was not something that they could possess. Not only Huang Futing, but Nangong Yuqing and the others also saw it clearly. Di Baichen is summoning an army of skeletons. Nangong Yuqing recognized at a glance. Back in the immortal cloud realm, Di Baichen had used this move. At that moment, he was like a demon god, looking down on the world with disdain. That kind of aura was still engraved in Nangong Yuqing's mind. Because it was too shocking, it was impossible to forget. Chapter 6149. Summoning an Army of Skeletons? The Nangong family had looked at Di Baichen in surprise. After seeing how long it took for Di Baichen to use this technique, he was curious. What kind of technique would require the power of so many people? It wasn't until he heard this that he finally understood. Everyone knew that dark attribute cultivators could summon an army of skeletons. However, it had been too long since a dark attribute cultivator had appeared, so they had never seen this technique before. That's right. When I first saw Di Baichen use this technique, it was the same. Now that I think about it, Bailey Hongzhuang must have transferred her power to Di Baichen. Nangong Yuqing narrowed his eyes. At that time, he had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang also had the dark attribute. Now that he thought about it, he finally understood. Bailey Hongzhuang raised the poison powder in her hand again, and the cultivators quickly retreated. They had already seen how powerful the poison powder was. Many people had died because of it, and they didn't want to experience it again. Seeing that the cultivators had retreated, Xiao He and Xiao Bai heaved a sigh of relief. Even if it was only for a moment, it would be good. Seeing the injuries on Xiao He and Xiao Bai, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a little distressed. Fortunately, the two of them had already taken the pills, so it would take some time for them to recover. Don't worry, Di Baichen is fine, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Hearing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's faces lit up with joy. They were completely relieved. That's good. Otherwise, if this continues, we won't be able to hold on. At this moment, Di Baichen's summoning ritual was completed. The dark attribute cultivators heaved a sigh of relief. They didn't expect that they could trust each other enough to do this. However, they were more curious about what their young master had done. That was because they didn't see any special changes in their surroundings. Di Baichen's complexion was somewhat pale, but his pair of black eyes were sparkling bright and dazzling. In the past, he only needed the strength of a few people to summon the skeleton army, but this time, there were too many opponents, so he had to use more strength to summon the surrounding skeletons. Only in this way would there be a good effect. Lei Ming and the giant beast were fighting fiercely. After seeing that Di Baichen had finished, their faces turned ugly. He didn't expect the other party to have so many people backing them up. They were able to forcefully stop all of this. How hateful! Bang! Di Baichen's leg landed on Xiao Yanlong's body. Xiao Yanlong and Junhong Cheng, these two shameless old fellows, had always maintained a sanctimonious image. Today, they could no longer hold it in. Di Baichen. Xiao Yanlong's face darkened. He turned to look at his surroundings, and saw that the battle had reached its climax. He never thought that this battle, which he was sure to win, would end up in this situation. You've been using it for so long, but there's no movement at all. Don't tell me you failed. Xiao Yanlong chuckled. Bang bang. Two more figures appeared not too far away. Xiren and Shengguan Yingying's figures were sent flying. Junhong Cheng's figure flashed, and arrived next to Xiao Yanlong. He had been delayed by Xiren and Shengguan Yingying for a while, but he had quickly found a way to deal with them. They're just deliberately mystifying things. Chapter 6150. Rumble. A series of muffled rumbles resounded from all directions, as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were shaking. Tap, tap, tap. It was the sound of orderly and hurried footsteps. Just by listening to the sound, one could tell that this team was very large. However, almost all the forces from both sides had gathered here. Who else would come? After hearing this series of sounds, Lei Ming's eyes shone with a trace of joy. Previously, he had been restrained by Di Baichen and the others, so he had specially ordered a practitioner to go to the guild and recruit people. In the entire upper realm, besides the mercenary guild, the large guilds had the most practitioners. However, most of the people who had watched today's ceremony were from the top forces of the upper realm, so they would not participate in this battle. Apart from these people, there were more ordinary practitioners. As long as the guilds were willing to give them some benefits, they would definitely join the battle without hesitation. Now that so much time had passed, perhaps the reinforcements had arrived. Now they still had a certain advantage. Once the reinforcements joined, the Di family and the Lin family would definitely be defeated. Among everyone, only Nangong Yuqing and the others who knew about Di Baichen's situation knew that this movement was most likely caused by the skeleton army. Heavens, it's actually a skeleton army. This mountain is filled with skeletons. So many skeletons, isn't it a little too scary? So this is what Di Baichen has been doing all this time. He can actually summon a skeleton army. Everyone was dumbfounded. When they saw Di Baichen gathering everyone's strength to prepare this move, they were very curious about what kind of shocking killing move it was. Why would it take so long to prepare? However, they did not expect that Di Baichen was actually summoning a skeleton army. Even in the upper realm, there was no one who did not know about the skeleton army. However, due to the decline of dark attribute practitioners, no one had ever seen anyone who could truly summon a skeleton army. However, today they really saw it. How could this be? Lei Ming stared blankly at the skeletons coming from all directions. They were clearly white bones, but at this moment, they were rushing over with their heads held high like warriors. With a single glance, he was certain that the number of skeletons that had appeared was greater than the number of people they had. The reinforcements didn't come, but the enemy's reinforcements did. No wonder Di Baichen needed to gather so much dark energy. Just the sheer number of skeletons was enough to shock anyone. The cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family were already struggling to hold on. When they saw the skeleton army, they almost lost their balance. Young Master's methods are too terrifying. I've never seen anything like this before. What's there to be afraid of? Now these skeletons all listen to Young Master's orders and are our allies. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Normally, when they saw the skeleton army, everyone would run as fast as they could, because these guys' fighting strength was very strong. And they didn't know pain, nor did they know fatigue. They were simply fighting machines. They had never thought that one day, they would be able to fight side by side with the skeleton army. Just thinking about it made them feel that this situation was too interesting. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.